Chapter 221, Arriving at the 50th Floor Again Plus, Turn Off Reset. Chapter 221, Arriving at the 50th Floor Again. Orion's ascent through the Tower of Myths had transformed into an exhilarating symphony of combat, spellcraft, and instinctual precision. From the 30th floor onward, he began actively employing his dragon instinct, heightening every reflex and sharpening his senses to near perfection. The arena shifted constantly, adapting its environment and opponents to challenge his adaptability and versatility. On the 35th floor, Orion stood within a mist-shrouded cavern, its chill seeping into his bones as he faced a dual-element mage wielding ice and wind. The echo conjured freezing cyclones that roared with deafening fury, yet Orion countered swiftly. Flames erupted from his mouth, the fierce heat from his drake-fire breath dispersing the icy storm in a blazing wave. His mind remained calm, thoughts crystal clear amidst battle. Ice is troublesome, Orion mused inwardly, sidestepping sharp icicles that shattered like glass around him. He swiftly cast Velocity Strike, lightning coalescing around his blade as he surged forward, striking decisively. The echo's strong body vanished in sparks, prompting a satisfied nod. Floor after floor, his opponents became increasingly fierce. On the 42nd floor, Orion confronted a robust earth mage protected by multiple stone barriers. Orion's calm voice whispered emerald blade, with mana sharpening the edges of his sword into a vibrant green sheen that sliced effortlessly through the stone defenses. Each victory bolstered his confidence. Lumi, I think I'm finally grasping what Grandpa meant by combat efficiency, Orion spoke softly, wiping sweat from his brow after a particularly arduous fight against a swift, dual-wielding swordsman Echo. Indeed, Master. Your combat instincts have improved dramatically, it's almost unfair to these poor echoes. He chuckled inwardly, what do you mean poor echoes? They are still giving me tough fights. But none can stand in front of you. Each successive floor brought forth a new challenge, and Orion seamlessly intertwined all three of his elements into cohesive strategies. His sword was slowly becoming the core of his fighting style as he integrated the use of spells with his swordsmanship. Finally, standing victoriously on the 49th floor, Orion took a deep breath, the chamber around him fading into tranquil silence. The walls were etched intricately with countless ancient runes softly glowing, as if acknowledging his strength. Next floor is the 50th. Let's see how strong that guy became, Orion whispered confidently. Ready when you are, Master. The familiar sensation of teleportation enveloped him once more. Orion blinked as his vision adjusted to the new floor, quickly observing his surroundings. The 50th floor stretched into a wide, open coliseum illuminated by floating azure orbs suspended in midair. Directly across the coliseum, standing motionless yet exuding a formidable presence, was the Echo Orion remembered all too vividly. Tall and heavily muscled, this opponent wore dark, durable armor etched with runic patterns, and his face remained partially obscured by a shadowy helm. Yet Orion instantly recognized the Echo. This was the very warrior who had previously brought him to the brink of death, whose unmatched physical might had crushed Orion's early confidence. A wave of adrenaline surged through Orion's veins, his heart beating fiercely within his chest. His previous encounter with this Echo had become his source of motivation to become stronger in the shortest time to take revenge. Finally, Orion murmured, his voice firm yet quiet. He exhaled softly, instantly triggering his dragon instinct. His senses flared to a level beyond human comprehension. The faintest shift in air currents, the subtlest movements of his opponent's muscles, the precise rhythm of breathing, all became vivid details he now perceived clearly. Orion firmly grasped the hilt of his obsidian longsword, immediately manipulating its weight through precise mana control. The weapon grew heavier, each incremental increase testing his muscular control. Satisfied, Orion stabilized the blade, his grip unyielding, determination etched into his calm features. The Echo moved, breaking its stillness with shocking speed. Despite knowing the Echo's physical prowess, Orion still found himself momentarily surprised by the sheer ferocity of the charge. The Echo crossed the distance in mere moments, his longsword slicing through the air with tremendous force. Clang! Their swords collided with explosive impact, sending shockwaves reverberating across the arena. Orion grit his teeth, bracing against the overwhelming strength of his adversary. The Echo's muscles bulged with raw power, his eyes glowing faintly, devoid of human weakness. Even with his dragon instinct fully active, Orion could clearly perceive the difference between them. Physically, the Echo still held a significant edge. Despite this gap, Orion's refined swordsmanship allowed him to smoothly redirect the enormous pressure of the Echo strikes. He pivoted calmly, parrying incoming blows and countering immediately. His movements were precise, each action born of rigorous training under Edgar and Lucan. Sparks burst forth as their blades clashed repeatedly, filling the Colosseum with the metallic symphony of intense combat. Not this time, Orion growled, "I fierce yet calm." The Echo pushed forward relentlessly, forcing Orion into a defensive posture. Each clash between their swords sent vibrations through his bones, muscles straining under the amplified pressure. Yet his composure held firm, his mind swiftly analyzing every subtle movement. The stalemate stretched longer than Orion anticipated. Minutes passed, each feeling longer than the last. His breathing remained steady, dragon instinct guiding him to dodge by mere centimeters, using the least amount of energy possible. Every strike the Echo delivered felt like a battering ram, yet Orion's meticulous control allowed him to hold firm. Suddenly, the Echo stepped back slightly, a brief pause signaling an impending shift in tactics. Orion tensed instantly, sensing a change. Before he could fully comprehend it, a dense, vibrant brown aura emanated from the Echo's sword, coating its surface entirely. Orion's eyes widened with realization, this was an earth elemental sword aura. The Echo swung again, and Orion instinctively met the attack head-on. Boom! The force behind the blow magnified dramatically, nearly shattering Orion's stance. His knees buckled slightly beneath the weight of the strike, feet sliding back several feet along the smooth stone. Breathing heavily, Orion quickly steadied himself, eyes narrowing intensely. "Earth Sword Aura," he whispered, recognizing the profound strength within the Echo's technique. His own sword skills, although greatly improved, lacked this depth of elemental fusion. Determination filled him anew, his heartbeat steady yet loud in his ears. Orion drew a slow, deep breath, closing his eyes momentarily to concentrate deeply. "You can do it, Master. You've trained so hard for this exact moment." Lumi's gentle encouragement resonated clearly within his mind, bolstering his confidence. Orion opened his eyes, their depths blazing with renewed resolve. Instead of retreating, he charged directly toward the Echo, meeting the monstrous sword strikes head-on. He carefully felt out the resonance between mana, weapon, and body, each clash feeding his comprehension of sword aura. Gradually, an understanding blossomed within him. Fire, his first and strongest affinity, was inherently aggressive, explosive, and unyielding. He visualized fire enveloping his blade, igniting with each determined strike, manifesting internally as conviction and externally as devastating strength. He swung again, meeting another of the Echo's earth-empowered strikes. As their swords clashed, a faint crimson aura flickered momentarily around Orion's blade. The Echo faltered, only briefly, but enough for Orion to notice. His heart soared with excitement. "Almost there," he murmured breathlessly. His mana surged, pulsating rhythmically through his veins and along his sword. Xianxia, the novelfire.net website on Google to access chapters of novels early and in the highest quality. Chapter 222, Ascension. He channeled emotions, passion, courage, and determination, drawing upon his deepest understanding of fire. His sword flared vibrantly, fiery red aura now firmly enveloping its edges. "Yes, Master. You did it. That's the fire sword aura." The Echo pressed forward, striking heavily, yet Orion now stood his ground confidently. Their blades, infused with opposing auras, clashed repeatedly, causing brilliant bursts of light and energy to scatter across the Colosseum. Despite this newfound mastery, the Echo remained formidable, its enhanced physicality and earth aura continually pressing Orion back. Yet Orion now moved much more calmly, precisely calculating each defensive maneuver. He slowly adapted, redirecting strikes with increasing ease, waiting patiently for the perfect opportunity. Lumi continued her spirited support, each cheerful word fueling Orion's calm resolve. The moment finally came. The echo lifted its blade slightly higher than usual for a mighty downward blow. Orion instantly recognized the vulnerability, immediately reducing the weight of his obsidian sword to its absolute minimum. With astonishing speed, his blade blurred forward, effortlessly piercing through the gap beneath the echo's raised weapon before he raised the weight of the sword to the limit that he could handle. His sword struck true, puncturing straight through the echo's armored chest and into its spectral heart. Time seemed to slow momentarily, silence reigning as the echo's eyes looked at Orion with deathly calmness. "You fought well," Orion whispered lightly, withdrawing his sword smoothly. The echo's figure began dissolving into shimmering motes of golden light, a faint yet acknowledging nod appearing briefly before its visage faded completely. Orion exhaled deeply, feeling the tension drain from his muscles as adrenaline subsided. "I knew you could do it, Master. You were amazing out there." Asterisk? Orion chuckled lightly, slight exhaustion and triumph mixed in his voice. "I honestly didn't think I'd master the sword aura today, Lumi. This victory, it feels even better than I expected." His heartbeat slowed, satisfaction washing over him. He stared thoughtfully at his blade, observing the now fading crimson aura. "There's still so much to learn, and more levels to clear. And Lumi will always be cheering you on, every step of the way. Greater than over equal to nabla less than over equal to, /. Smiling warmly, Orion looked upward as another teleportation circle gradually appeared beneath his feet, softly glowing in anticipation. "Let's see what awaits next," Orion said confidently, looking forward to see what he would encounter ahead as the teleportation soon took him to the next floor. As the glow of teleportation faded, Orion found himself standing on the 51st floor, a vast battlefield covered in a thin, silvery mist. Beneath him lay polished marble tiles etched with unfamiliar ancient runes, faintly shimmering beneath the translucent fog. The arena stretched outward endlessly, encircled by colossal marble pillars, their surfaces cracked yet sturdy, wrapped in emerald vines. "Oh? The floor started to become fancy now?" he noticed while looking around. Shaking his head, he stepped forward confidently, his obsidian sword shimmering subtly. Opposite him, a towering armored warrior materialized, bearing a spear engraved with shimmering wind runes. Orion tightened his grip, immediately surging his mana into his blade. The crimson aura of fire bloomed, empowering each strike. The echo lunged, spear slicing through air currents with lethal precision, aiming directly for Orion's chest. Clang! Their weapons clashed fiercely, sparks cascading brilliantly through the misty arena. Orion's dragon instinct flared, guiding him through complex maneuvers, dodging the spear thrusts narrowly and retaliating decisively. Though the warrior was stronger and faster than previous foes, Orion's fire-infused strikes kept it at bay, systematically weakening its guard until a decisive strike ended the confrontation swiftly. Floor after floor, Orion advanced steadily, encountering increasingly intelligent echoes. By the 58th floor, the foes began demonstrating remarkable adaptability, predicting and countering Orion's strategies with unsettling precision. Reaching the 60th floor, Orion paused momentarily, taking a calm breath. The floor transformed into an expansive, lush forest, sunlight streaming softly through towering trees whose massive branches formed an emerald canopy overhead. Moss-covered stones dotted the clearing, exuding vitality and serenity. Orion felt wood mana humming gently through his surroundings, resonating harmoniously within his sea of consciousness. In front of him appeared a warrior whose entire presence radiated gentle, yet unyielding vitality. The echo, a slender yet firmly built figure, held an elegant curved sword that pulsed steadily with wood elemental sword aura, a luminous emerald radiance manifesting life and resilience. "Wood aura," Orion muttered appreciatively, sensing the inherent balance between aggression and defense in each subtle shift of the echo's stance. Curiosity and anticipation built within him. They clashed fiercely, swords meeting again and again in fluid, rhythmic motions. The wood affinity echo moved gracefully, each strike flowing naturally into the next like branches bending gently yet firmly under strong winds. Orion carefully analyzed each movement, gradually recognizing the elemental pattern, harmony, balance, endless adaptability. I understand it now, Orion realized silently. Wood sword aura is quite different from fire sword aura. I need to try something different. Carefully channeling his wood mana, Orion visualized vibrant vines entwining his blade, granting resilience and adaptability. Gradually, his sword began radiating an emerald glow, mirroring the echoes. Empowered by this newfound comprehension, Orion met the echo's blows effortlessly, mirroring its elegant adaptability. After an exhaustive exchange, Orion finally found an opening. Swiftly deflecting the echo's blade, he executed a decisive slash, dispersing his opponent into shimmering green fragments. Breathing deeply, Orion admired the lingering emerald aura around his sword. Wow, Master! You comprehended the wood sword aura so quickly. It's beautiful. Carrot. Of course, who do you think I am? He joked. Hee, of course Master is the best. Greater than over equal to less than over equal to. He chuckled inwardly and continued, the sword aura resonance stone laid a perfect foundation. Without it, mastering these auras would have taken far longer. Indeed, Master. That stone was incredibly precious. Search the Nelfer.net website on Google to access chapters of novels early and in the highest quality. Thinking about his remaining thunder sword aura, Orion pressed onward. Floors gradually blurred together, each presenting progressively more cunning and formidable adversaries. On the 69th floor, Orion encountered a thunder element swordsman, a fierce, imposing figure with storm gray armor crackling with electricity. Their blades collided with devastating intensity, sparks exploding chaotically across the stone platform. Each exchange felt perilous, the echo's blade strikes as swift as lightning, every blow vibrating dangerously. Observing the echo's ruthless speed and overwhelming force, Orion concentrated fiercely, visualizing thunder mana coursing through his veins and sword. His mind recalled the violent beauty of a tempest, relentless, powerful, unstoppable. With an electrifying surge of comprehension, a blazing electric blue aura erupted from Orion's blade, crackling furiously. Empowered by newfound thunder sword aura, Orion's speed and destructive force rose dramatically. The echo struggled against Orion's amplified power, ultimately succumbing to a decisive strike that shattered its form entirely. Standing amidst fading sparks, Orion exhaled deeply, feeling profound satisfaction. Phew, thunder elemental sword aura echoes are really more troublesome than even those echoes who have mastered dual elemental sword auras. But all are nothing but wet kittens in front of Master. He couldn't help but chuckle at her relentless fangirling. And thunder sword aura truly matches me the best, he said, acknowledging the unrivaled destructive capability inherent in his affinity. It's incredibly powerful, Master. You're unstoppable now. Greater than over equal to less than over equal to. Maybe, Orion chuckled softly, but without the sword aura resonance stone, even a single sword aura would have required weeks or months to grasp fully. Its effect is astonishing. Chapter 223, Water and Metal. Continuing his ascent, Orion moved calmly yet purposefully. Opponents grew increasingly formidable, displaying intelligence rivaling true warriors. They anticipated his strategies, exploiting any subtle weaknesses. Orion, however, countered each move patiently, employing the full spectrum of his powers, dragon instinct, combined swordsmanship and spells, as well as strategic manipulation of sword weight. On the 77th floor, Orion materialized onto a stark battlefield. The arena's obsidian floor, polished to mirror-like perfection, reflected the distant glow of countless floating crimson lanterns illuminating the expansive chamber. Opposite Orion, the female echo stood utterly still, twin longswords held gracefully at her sides. Her black armor shimmered subtly under the crimson light, silver runes pulsing rhythmically along its sleek contours. Her raven-black hair cascaded over her shoulders, accentuating her quiet, lethal elegance. Unlike previous opponents, Orion sensed a refined and poised intelligence behind her eyes, a soul whose depth had yet to fade completely, lingering defiantly despite countless years. He took a measured step forward, lifting his obsidian longsword as he spoke calmly, breaking the tense silence. It seems you'll be my strongest opponent yet. The echo smiled faintly, her eyes sharp and piercing as they calmly observed him. The air between them stilled briefly, tension building before erupting violently as they both surged forward simultaneously. Her slender frame blurred into motion, dual longswords slicing through the air in fluid, mesmerizing arcs, attacking from different angles with perfect synchronicity. Clang! 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 Their blades collided furiously, sparks scattering brilliantly across the polished obsidian floor. Orion felt immediate pressure, forced instantly onto the defensive. While his physical strength clearly surpassed hers, the finesse and sheer precision of her dual-wielded longswords quickly negated his raw advantage. She wove attacks and feints together seamlessly, each strike precisely placed to test and break Orion's guard. Orion quickly adapted, leaning deeply into his dragon instinct. His senses heightened dramatically, enabling him to narrowly dodge or deflect her rapid strikes. Their movements became an intricate dance of blades, a dazzling, deadly choreography. Search the novelfire.net website on Google to access chapters of novels early and in the highest quality. Realizing that purely defensive tactics would lead nowhere, Orion gathered his thunder mana, channeling it fiercely into his obsidian sword. The blade erupted in brilliant electric blue energy, the newly mastered thunder sword aura crackling violently with each swing. Orion slashed decisively, arcs of lightning surging outward, forcing the echo momentarily into a cautious retreat. "Let's see how you handle this," Orion murmured with focus. The echo's eyes flashed briefly with approval, acknowledging Orion's fierce strike. Without hesitation, she counterattacked. Her right blade gleamed with a shimmering azure radiance, the serene yet relentless power of water sword aura. Simultaneously, her left blade pulsed vibrantly, becoming encased in brilliant silver, the unyielding, razor-sharp essence of metal sword aura. Orion's eyes widened in genuine surprise, fascination briefly overtaking his fighting spirit. She's using two sword auras simultaneously, each with a different elemental affinity? Such mastery. She pressed forward relentlessly, her dual sword auras perfectly complementing each other. Water aura flowed seamlessly with smooth, unpredictable movements, elegantly deflecting Orion's lightning-infused strikes. Meanwhile, the metal aura struck ruthlessly, exploiting even the smallest openings with merciless precision. Orion's defenses rapidly eroded under her dual assault, forced backwards step by step. Despite his strength, each exchange increasingly favored her, leaving him astonished at her profound mastery. He desperately countered with thunder-infused attacks, but her flawless harmony of water and metal negated his fierce offensive. "Master, be careful. Her sword auras are incredibly powerful together." "I know," Orion replied inwardly, gritting his teeth. "I didn't expect sword auras could be used simultaneously like this." The echo suddenly pivoted sharply, her water aura longsword effortlessly redirecting Orion's next heavy strike. Instantly, her metal aura blade surged forward in a swift, unstoppable thrust. Orion's dragon instinct screamed danger, but it was already too late. Her blade pierced through his defenses swiftly. Time seemed to blur as the floor's runes lit up with a glorious array of lights before everything paused and Orion teleported outside the tower. As Orion materialized outside the Tower of Myths, his senses were momentarily overwhelmed by the sudden transition from fierce combat to peaceful surroundings. Sunlight gently warmed his skin, and the cool afternoon breeze brushed softly against his dampened hair. Around him, a chorus of excited whispers rippled among the gathered students, who watched him with undisguised awe and disbelief. A handful of instructors, too, had paused their casual conversations to regard Orion with intrigued expressions. "Fucking hell," came an irritated shout from nearby. Orion turned his head sharply to see Instructor Viren grinning victoriously, holding out his palm expectantly towards another instructor. The disgruntled instructor reluctantly removed a storage ring from his finger, dropping it with evident reluctance into Viren's awaiting hand. Viren chuckled triumphantly, pocketing his newfound prize before confidently striding over to Orion. His demeanor was relaxed, almost nonchalant, though his eyes sparkled with genuine admiration and curiosity. "Young Hellstorm," Viren greeted warmly, clapping Orion on the shoulder, "you've made me richer yet again." Truly, I didn't misjudge you. Your progress today was phenomenal. Orion managed a faint, weary smile, still breathing deeply to regain his composure. Sweat trickled down the sides of his face, testament to the intensity of the battles he'd just fought. Instructor Viren, he said with a slight chuckle, I'm starting to wonder just how many bets you have riding on my performances. Viren laughed heartily, drawing a few more amused glances from nearby students. Let's just call them friendly wagers to keep things interesting, he replied casually, his tone jovial but mysterious. Besides, it adds extra excitement to my otherwise dull routine. Orion raised a skeptical eyebrow, shaking his head lightly. If you say so, instructor. Viren's grin widened playfully. Oh, trust me. Your performance alone today was enough to shake the entire student body. Even some third-year prodigies rarely cross floor 75, let alone on their second attempt. Orion exhaled thoughtfully, feeling both pride and curiosity ignite within him. Speaking of rankings, he began curiously, what position have I reached after today's climb? Viren folded his arms dramatically, clearly enjoying the suspense. He glanced around theatrically, noticing the students and instructors subtly leaning closer, eager to overhear. Well, young Hellstorm, let's hear your guess first. Which rank do you think you've reached? Orion paused momentarily, an amused twinkle appearing in his eyes as he glanced aside playfully. Rank 69. Viren blinked, caught momentarily off guard, before bursting into laughter. Why precisely that number? He asked, clearly entertained. No particular reason, Orion replied casually, shrugging innocently. Master, you perv. .. Lumi scolded, her virtual cheeks reddening visibly on the interface. Ignoring Lumi's adorable embarrassment, Orion maintained his cool exterior, waiting patiently for Viren's answer. Close, but you've exceeded even your own playful guess, Viren finally revealed, smiling broadly. You now stand proudly at rank 49. Orion's eyes widened slightly in genuine surprise. Rank 49? Doesn't that mean I've surpassed nearly all the second-year students? Precisely, Viren confirmed with a satisfied nod. You've officially shaken things up, Orion. Some second years and even a few third years will no doubt be scrambling to reclaim their positions. Congratulations are indeed in order. Orion nodded thoughtfully, absorbing the reality of his sudden rise. He glanced toward the immense structure of the Tower of Myths, reflecting deeply upon the power he'd witnessed within, especially that final opponent and her dual sword auras. Instructor Viren, Orion began seriously, his voice slightly lowered, that echo on the 77th floor, the one wielding dual sword auras, how common is that mastery? Chapter 224, Path of Dual Sword Aura Plus, Turn Off Reset. Chapter 224, Path of Dual Sword Aura. Viren's smile faded slightly, replaced by a contemplative look. The dual aura blade dancer. She was once an extraordinary prodigy from this academy, millennia ago. Such mastery of dual sword auras is incredibly rare, Orion. Even among peak talents, it takes profound comprehension, immense natural talent, and relentless discipline. The number of demons she killed with her dual blades is enough to scare some people to death. Orion exhaled slowly, feeling renewed admiration for the tower's profound legacy. Her skill was beyond anything I've encountered. It made me realize how vast the path of swordsmanship truly is. Viren placed a reassuring hand on Orion's shoulder, nodding appreciatively. Precisely. You've only just begun your journey. Remember today, Orion, it marks the first step into a world much greater and far more fascinating than most could ever imagine. Feeling inspired, Orion offered Viren a respectful nod. Thank you for your guidance, instructor. You've given me a lot to think about. Viren grinned again, lightly patting Orion's shoulder before stepping back. Go rest and recover, young Hellstorm. You've earned it. Orion offered him a small smile. Actually, I'll head to the library first. There's something I need to look into. Viren raised a curious brow, chuckling softly. Ever the diligent student, eh? Very well. Just remember to pace yourself. Excellence is commendable, but balance ensures longevity. Orion laughed lightly, shaking his head as he stepped away from Viren. I'll keep that in mind, instructor. Turning towards the library, Orion slowly walked toward it. Surrounding students whispered and stared, parting subtly to allow his passage, awe and curiosity lingering in their eyes. Orion, however, paid them little heed, his thoughts already shifting toward his next goal. I need to research more about dual sword auras and mana techniques, Orion thought determinedly. Master, are you planning to learn dual sword wielding? Orion shook his head, not yet. I will first ask Uncle Edgar how feasible fusing elements is. If it's something nearly impossible, then I'll consider learning dual swordsmanship, as that will suit my multiple elements much more. I think it would be hard, Master. I tried looking into the inheritance, but it doesn't have many details regarding human training methods. But even inside for dragons, the fusion of elements seems pretty impossible at the current level. Orion walked slowly along the cobblestone path, immersed deeply in thought. The gentle sunlight streaming through the rustling leaves overhead cast playful shadows on the ground, creating a serene and tranquil atmosphere. Students passed by, casting curious, admiring glances in Orion's direction, some whispering animatedly to their friends about the incredible feat he had accomplished in the Tower of Myths. SEA the novelfire.nt website on Google to access chapters of novels early and in the highest quality. Ignoring their murmurs, Orion continued walking steadily, his obsidian longsword safely sheathed at his waist. The quiet tranquility of the Academy's inner grounds provided him with the calm he needed to mentally sort through his recent experiences and consider his next moves. Lumi, even if fusing elements seems impossible, there should at least be someone who tried it, right? Orion asked mentally, his brows furrowing slightly. Probably. But Master, your elements are already so strong individually. Combining them would be super complicated. 3. Lumi replied thoughtfully. Orion chuckled softly, shaking his head. That's exactly why I'm interested. Complexity usually leads to strength. Imagine combining thunder's destructive power with fire's intensity, or wood's adaptability with thunder's speed. I can't ignore such possibilities. Oh, that sounds incredible. Master, you're amazing to think so far ahead. Lumi believes in you. Lumi said cheerfully, her enthusiasm clear in her voice. Orion smiled gently, amused at how quickly she folded. Thanks, Lumi. But still, if fusion is truly impossible at this stage, I need to think about alternative paths to strengthen myself, like dual swordsmanship. Lumi fell momentarily silent, considering the idea. After a brief pause, she replied. But Master, wouldn't dual wielding be complicated too? You would need twice the focus and mana control. True, Orion agreed thoughtfully, nodding to himself as he walked. But seeing that Echo wield dual elements so effortlessly made me realize it's a viable path for multi-element users like myself. Besides, complexity has never deterred me before. You're right, Master. I've always admired your determination. Orion continued his leisurely pace toward the library, enjoying the pleasant atmosphere and his ongoing conversation with Lumi. Approaching the massive wooden doors again, Orion lightly pushed them open and entered the quiet sanctuary within. The vast library remained unchanged, shelves upon shelves filled with countless books stretched endlessly throughout the chamber. Soft mana lamps illuminated the surroundings gently, casting a comforting glow upon the polished wooden floors and ornate shelves. At the large wooden desk near the entrance sat the elderly librarian Orion recognized from his previous visit. The librarian's sharp eyes brightened in recognition as Orion approached, an appreciative smile forming on his usually stern face. Ah, young Hellstorm. Back so soon? The librarian asked warmly, adjusting his thin spectacles. Not many students frequent the library as often as you, especially after such an extraordinary climb through the Tower of Myths. Orion smiled politely, offering a respectful bow. Good afternoon, sir. It seems my visits might become even more frequent in the future. The librarian laughed softly, clearly pleased by Orion's scholarly attitude. And I will always welcome diligent students like yourself. How may I assist you today? Orion's expression grew serious, his voice calm and clear. I'd like to broaden my foundational understanding further, specifically in the fields of alchemy, runesmithing, and spirit arts. Could you guide me to some good introductory resources? The librarian raised an eyebrow, visibly impressed by Orion's broad range of interests. Ah, now those are indeed profound disciplines, young Hellstorm. Pursuing such paths simultaneously is idiotic. I'm sure you won't try to master all of them and are only trying to see what they are. Orion smiled lightly. Of course, I'm not a madman. I still have to master my multiple elements, so I won't even have time to learn other things extensively. The librarian chuckled appreciatively, scribbling a few notes carefully onto a small parchment. Very well. Let me clarify the resources available to you. For these disciplines, we have basic level texts priced at 500 Rp each, intermediate level volumes at 2000 Rp each, and advanced level tomes costing 5000 Rp each. Orion paused briefly, silently calculating. I think starting at the basic level will be most suitable for me at the moment. May I purchase all 3 basic level texts for alchemy, runesmithing, and spirit arts? The librarian nodded approvingly, clearly pleased with Orion's decision. An excellent choice. Building a strong foundation is key, especially in such complex arts. Orion handed over his student badge without hesitation. Oh? You have around 3000 Rp now? 1000 from last time and 2000 from this climb? Quite impressive. He then swiftly scanned it, deducting 1500 Rp from Orion's remaining balance. You now have 1400 Rp remaining, the librarian informed him, handing back the badge. Use these resources wisely, young Hellstorm. I expect great things from someone of your caliber. Orion accepted the 3 foundational books, storing them safely in his spatial ring. I will, sir. Thank you again for your guidance. As Orion stepped away from the desk, Lumi chimed excitedly in his mind once more. Hee, you really fooled that old guy, master. He really thinks that you can't master so many things at once. Orion chuckled while exiting the library. We can't blame them for their ignorance. They haven't seen a genius of my caliber yet. Chapter 225, Deathflower Past. He continued to stroll leisurely from the library toward the garden where they usually gather. Master, are you meeting Arya and Amelia now? Yes, Orion responded, a gentle smile forming on his face as he admired the scenery. I couldn't meet them in the morning, maybe now they will be there? Indeed, nothing wrong in trying. While chatting, he continued to walk toward his destination. Meanwhile, high above Thunder Peak Royal Academy, in the Sky Pavilion, Dean Ilariel stood quietly, gazing out of the ornate windows overlooking the entire campus. Her ash-gray hair flowed gracefully down her back, catching the sunlight gently, while her sharp silver eyes reflected both intrigue and subtle amusement. 77th floor. She murmured softly to herself, folding her arms thoughtfully. To think Orion would actually surpass even my initial expectations. And not only that, he was also hiding another element, A complex mix of surprise, curiosity, and determination flickered briefly across her calm, elegant features. I had anticipated that what he had shown would not be his full potential, but to think he had hidden another element. This boy really continues to surprise me. She whispered softly, her voice filled with faint exasperation. How many more secrets do you hold, Orion? She turned away from the window, pacing slowly through her elegantly furnished chamber, robes rustling gently behind her. Her brows knitted thoughtfully, and she paused, glancing toward the exit. Looks like I really need to have a good chat with old man Eldrick about him. This should help me get good compensation for the mana pool. She lightly giggled at the end of her words, brushing back a stray strand of her hair. Should I go today? I can't delay much longer. He might leave for the Empire to assess the situation there again. She thoughtfully said. Back down in the academy, as Orion slowly approached the garden's central area, he slowed his steps, scanning the surroundings and looking below the cherry blossom tree. But even after carefully searching, he found no sign of Arya or Emilia anywhere. However, he found someone unexpected standing below the tree, NYSS Blackwell. Orion slowed his approach as he recognized the solitary figure seated quietly beneath the branches of the cherry blossom tree. Soft petals danced gently in the breeze, occasionally floating downward to settle gracefully upon the figure's dark attire. NYSS sat alone on the polished stone bench, a stark contrast against the vibrant colors surrounding her. Her black hair fell like midnight silk over her shoulders, framing a pale, contemplative face with sharp eyes. Even from a distance, her isolated presence was palpable. Students carefully gave the entire area around her a wide berth, avoiding even fleeting eye contact. A faint curiosity tugged at Orion's thoughts as he studied NYSS's solitary posture. She appeared lost in thought, gazing blankly toward the distant horizon, her expression carefully calm yet tinged subtly with loneliness. Feeling a surge of curiosity, Orion silently walked closer, footsteps muffled by the soft grass beneath him. As he gently took a seat next to her, the bench creaked softly, prompting NYSS to finally glance toward him. Her eyes widened briefly with surprise before a slight warmth flickered within her usually distant gaze. Orion, she greeted quietly, her voice soft as she hesitatingly said, "I wasn't expecting to see you here." "Master." "She is lying. You come here daily." Ring in equal to underscoring in equal to. Orion smiled gently, choosing to ignore Lumi as he noticed the subtle brightness that had briefly appeared in her usually reserved expression. "Likewise. I was actually searching for Arya and Emilia, but it seems fate had other plans." A faint, hesitant smile tugged at NYSS's lips, her eyes momentarily drifting toward the cherry blossoms drifting silently around them. "Both of them are on the cusp of breakthrough, so they are taking a few days off." Orion nodded slowly, his curiosity now focused entirely upon NYSS. A comfortable silence settled briefly between them, punctuated only by the quiet rustling of leaves and distant murmurs of students. Finally, NYSS broke the quiet first. "Congratulations, by the way," she said softly, glancing toward him again, a subtle warmth could be felt in her voice. "I heard about your tower climb from the surrounding students." 77 floors, impressive." "Thanks," Orion replied warmly, smiling gently. "It was a bit harder than I'd expected, but at least I gained a lot from it." NYSS studied him carefully, her eyes reflecting a complicated blend of admiration and hesitation. Her expression soon shifted subtly to something darker, more uncertain. Remembering their previous encounter, Orion seized this moment of vulnerability to gently broach the topic. "NYSS," he began carefully, maintaining gentle eye contact, "last time we met, you looked at me strangely. Like there was something bothering you. Do you mind if I ask what it was?" NYSS immediately tensed, her expression hardening defensively. She shook her head quickly, averting her eyes. "It was nothing. Just something personal. It's not important." But Orion sensed a deeper struggle beneath her dismissive words. Gently, he placed his hand on the bench beside her, not too close, yet close enough to convey sincerity. "NYSS, please don't feel pressured, but if there's something you wish to share, I'm here to listen. Sometimes, keeping things bottled up only makes them heavier." NYSS slowly glanced toward him again, her guarded gaze softening at Orion's earnest expression. She hesitated visibly, conflict flashing behind her eyes. Finally, she exhaled deeply, her voice nearly a whisper. "When you fell unconscious at the Origin Mana Pool, I thought something terrible might have happened. I thought it could be my fault." Surprised, Orion furrowed his brow gently, confusion evident in his voice. "Your fault? Why would you think that?" "Oh, are we going to learn why people call her the Death Flower?" NYSS closed her eyes momentarily, clearly struggling internally. Her slender fingers tightly gripped the edges of her dark robes, betraying the emotional turmoil beneath her composed exterior. "Because people around me always suffer," she whispered softly, almost bitterly. "Ever since I was born, tragedy has followed me like a relentless shadow." Orion's expression softened further, his empathy deepening into genuine concern. He remained silent, giving NYSS the space and courage to continue. Search *the Nelfer.net website on Google to access chapters of novels early and in the highest quality. When I was born, my mother died, she spoke softly, her voice trembling slightly. By the time I was 3, my elder sister, the person whom I was closest to after my mother's passing, also died. Before I even turned 7, my father passed away unexpectedly. Her voice grew steadier as she recounted the painful memories, but sadness filled every quiet word. Slowly, the friends I made, the people who cared for me, one by one, they either died mysteriously or became terribly ill. Everyone who got close to me suffered. It was as if I was cursed. Orion listened carefully, a deep ache building inside him as NYSS shared her painful past. Her voice carried a weight of loneliness he hadn't imagined possible from someone who usually projected such icy strength. Now, only my aunt remains, NYSS finished quietly, her gaze distant yet pained. She's the only one unaffected by this curse. For a moment, I feared that because I started feeling closer to you and the others, something might have happened to you as well. Seeing you unconscious that day, I thought it was happening again. Chapter 226, Exiting the Academy. Orion felt an overwhelming wave of compassion toward NYSS, fully understanding her guarded, withdrawn nature. Gently, he placed a reassuring hand upon hers, briefly squeezing her slender fingers in comfort. NYSS, he spoke softly yet firmly, his voice carrying sincerity, nothing has happened to me so far, and nothing will happen to me later as well. If your aunt can ignore whatever curse you are going through, then I can do so as well. She looked at him hesitantly, her eyes highlighting the conflict she was feeling inside. Orion gently smiled, I'm not merely saying this to boast, but I actually have confidence in myself. And even if you can't trust in me, trust in my potential and talent. You have seen it for yourself, do you think I would go down so easily? And you are not to blame for the misfortune that follows you, after all, you are just as clueless about it as the rest. Her eyes widened slightly, moistening faintly with restrained tears, clearly moved yet uncertain. Orion continued gently, determined to reassure her completely. If anything, it sounds like you've simply experienced far too much loss for one person to bear alone, Orion continued softly. I can't change your past, NYSS, but I promise you're not alone now. Even if not the others, I'm here for you. You don't have to face this by yourself anymore. NYSS stared deeply into Orion's gentle eyes, emotion finally breaking through her carefully constructed barriers. A faint tear escaped, trickling slowly down her cheek, her expression vulnerable yet much more relieved. Thank you, Orion, she whispered softly, her voice thick with suppressed emotion. You have no idea how much hearing that means to me. Orion smiled gently, compassion filling his gaze. You don't need to thank me, NYSS. Friends support each other. She nodded slowly, her quiet gaze gradually filling with genuine warmth. Beneath the cherry blossoms, with petals softly falling around them, Orion and NYSS sat quietly together, sharing a moment of peace as the stillness remained for a while. Orion gently rose from the stone bench beneath the cherry blossoms, casting one last reassuring glance at NYSS, who remained seated, her eyes gazing softly at the falling petals, her expression finally holding a quiet sense of relief and calm. Search *the Novelliar.net website on Google to access chapters of novels early and in the highest quality. He began walking slowly away, heading toward the academy's main exit, the soft rustle of grass beneath his footsteps harmonizing with the distant murmur of students' voices. I didn't expect her past to be so sad, Master. Lumi whispered quietly, her typically cheerful voice subdued and filled with genuine sorrow. Orion exhaled deeply, nodding subtly. Neither did I, Lumi. She hides her pain behind a mask of indifference, but beneath that aloof facade, she's carrying unimaginable burdens. It's heartbreaking, honestly. Lumi hesitated briefly before softly asking. But Master, aren't you concerned? It seems like her curse is quite real. Even she believes it herself. Orion paused momentarily, his footsteps slowing. He turned his gaze upward, observing the blue skies above, the soft afternoon sunlight filtering gently through scattered clouds. A warm breeze brushed softly against his face, carrying with it the faint fragrance of distant flowers. He smiled faintly, shaking his head confidently. Concerned? Perhaps a bit, for her sake. But afraid? Absolutely not. You're truly not scared, Master? Lumi asked again, her voice laced with a blend of admiration and lingering worry. Orion let out a soft chuckle, resuming his steady pace toward the academy gates. Scared? Of a curse like that? Lumi, you know me better. I have the bloodline of the true dragons, the potential of the perfect human, and I stand at the pinnacle of all races. Compared to that, this supposed curse of misfortune is hardly threatening. And even if there is some strange force behind NYSS's misfortune, I have confidence I can overcome it. Lumi remained quiet momentarily before giggling softly, her usual enthusiasm returning. Master, you really are incredible. It makes Lumi so proud to follow you. Orion laughed gently, feeling warmth and affection toward his cheerful companion. You're my little cheerleader, aren't you, Lumi? Always and forever, Master. Greater than over equal to less than over equal to. She replied happily. By the time their conversation had come to a pleasant pause, Orion had reached the grand gates of the academy, passing through the intricate archway that marked the boundary between Thunder Peak Royal Academy and the bustling outside world. Just outside, he spotted the luxurious obsidian carriage waiting patiently, its polished exterior gleaming softly in the afternoon sun. Standing next to the carriage were two familiar figures, Edgar, calm and dignified as always, and Lucan, leaning casually against the carriage with his usual mischievous expression. As Orion approached, Lucan straightened with a grin, waving dramatically. Ah, there he is. Our prodigious climber of towers returns victorious again. Edgar gave a calm smile, shaking his head lightly at Lucan's theatrics. Welcome back, young master. We heard about your impressive feat in the Tower of Myths. Orion chuckled softly, giving both men a friendly nod. You two have been busy gossiping, I see. Lucan shrugged nonchalantly, feigning innocence. How can we not? It seems like half the academy is already abuzz about your performance. Honestly, young master, leave some glory for the other students too. Orion laughed lightly, shaking his head with amusement. Oh, please. I'm just doing my best. There are plenty more challenges ahead. Edgar stepped forward calmly, a hint of genuine pride evident in his typically composed demeanor. Regardless, your progress continues to exceed our expectations. You've done well, young master. Orion's eyes warmed appreciatively. Edgar's praise, always sincere, held particular meaning for him. Thank you, Uncle Edgar. Coming from you, that means a lot. Lucan rolled his eyes playfully, pretending to wipe a tear dramatically. Such tender moments. Ah, my heart can hardly bear it. Orion and Edgar simultaneously glanced at Lucan with amused exasperation, prompting another burst of laughter from the mischievous demon in disguise. All right, enough chit-chatting, Edgar finally interjected calmly, opening the carriage door smoothly. Shall we head back now? Yes, let's head back, Orion said with a contented smile, stepping gracefully into the carriage. Orion settled comfortably onto the plush velvet seat inside the luxurious obsidian carriage. Lucan was driving the carriage at the front, his mischievous eyes glancing lazily around the road, while Edgar sat quietly opposite Orion, posture impeccably straight as always. A soft jolt signaled that the carriage had started moving, wheels smoothly rolling along the paved streets, creating a gentle rhythmic background noise. Orion leaned back thoughtfully, reflecting deeply on his recent experiences in the Tower of Myths, particularly the striking performance of the dual-aura blade dancer. After a quiet moment, Orion broke the peaceful silence, his voice calm but tinged with curiosity. Uncle Edgar, there's something I'd like your opinion on. Edgar turned his head slightly, asking in a slightly curious voice, Of course, young master. Ask whatever you wish. Orion paused briefly, gathering his thoughts carefully before speaking. While climbing the Tower of Myths today, I encountered an echo on the 77th floor who wielded two swords, each imbued with a different elemental sword aura simultaneously. I wanted to know just how challenging it is to achieve something like that. Is dual sword aura mastery common? Edgar's brows lifted slightly in genuine surprise, clearly impressed. Lucan also glanced back at Orion curiously, suddenly more interested in the conversation. Chapter 227, Feasibility of Sword Aura Fusion Plus, Turn Off Reset. Chapter 227, Feasibility of Sword Aura Fusion Dual Sword Auras? Edgar echoed thoughtfully, stroking his chin. Young master, to answer your question simply, no, it's not common at all. In fact, it's an extraordinarily rare feat. To use two swords effectively is already a significant challenge. It demands exceptional spatial awareness, flawless coordination, and extraordinary reflexes. Orion nodded slowly, his eyes reflecting keen interest. So, just mastering dual-wielding swordsmanship alone is that demanding? Edgar nodded firmly. Precisely. But once you add sword aura into the equation, the complexity grows exponentially. Sword aura isn't just a technique, it's the fusion of deep elemental comprehension and swordsmanship mastery. To simultaneously wield two different elemental sword auras, the practitioner must split their mental focus perfectly between both elements, synchronizing their physical movements seamlessly. Only a scant few whom I know have successfully accomplished such mastery. Orion absorbed Edgar's words silently, considering their implications carefully. He imagined again the echo's fluid, elegant movements, wielding contrasting yet complementary sword auras with near-perfect harmony. What about sword aura fusion? Orion suddenly asked, his voice slightly more hesitant yet deeply intrigued. Would it be more difficult than wielding dual sword auras? Edgar's eyes widened momentarily before a gentle chuckle escaped his lips. Lucan leaned back curiously, clearly intrigued by Orion's ambitious question. Sword aura fusion, Edgar began slowly, his tone calm yet deeply knowledgeable, falls under the broader category of elemental fusion itself. And elemental fusion is considered hundreds, perhaps even thousands of times harder than simply using two sword auras separately. Thousands of times harder? Orion asked softly, clearly surprised despite his expectations. Edgar nodded gravely, his eyes reflecting genuine seriousness. Indeed, young master. Elemental fusion demands not only profound understanding of each individual element but also requires the physical and spiritual strength to withstand the immense backlash resulting from the clashing elements. Merely controlling one sword aura is strenuous enough, forcing two different sword auras into harmony is practically impossible for anyone below the 9th tier. In fact, even those who've transcended the 9th tier most of the time fail disastrously when attempting fusion. Lucan leaned back dramatically, letting out a low whistle. In other words, it's madness to even try. Few historical records speak of successful fusions, and those who succeeded were often exceptional existences, geniuses among geniuses. Orion listened intently, thoughtful silence filling the carriage briefly. And what exactly happens if someone attempts elemental fusion without being prepared? Edgar's expression darkened slightly, his voice solemn. The best outcome is severe injury, lasting damage to one's mana channels and sea of consciousness. The worst, complete annihilation from elemental backlash, destruction of one's sea of consciousness, and even death. The gravity of Edgar's words settled over them quietly. Orion exhaled deeply, yet his eyes retained a spark of slight excitement. I see, then such a path truly isn't something lightly considered. Don't even think about it. Edgar nodded, his gaze softening as he noticed Orion's serious yet curious expression. Precisely. However, young master, with your talent and unparalleled potential, if anyone might grasp such a fusion in the distant future, it might just be you. Nevertheless, it mustn't be rushed, and solid foundational comprehension of each element individually is essential first. Orion smiled appreciatively at Edgar's careful advice. I understand, Uncle Edgar. I'll focus on mastering my current elements deeply before even contemplating something so dangerous. Lucan chuckled, breaking the solemn mood, a playful smirk tugging at his lips. Honestly, young master, only you could seriously contemplate something as absurdly difficult as elemental fusion with a straight face. Orion laughed lightly, shaking his head with amused resignation. Perhaps you're right, brother Lucan. But ambition is part of what drives improvement. Even if it's currently impossible, setting ambitious goals can still guide my path forward. Edgar's eyes filled with pride, offering Orion a gentle nod. Well said, young master. Such unwavering resolve and ambition are precisely what define truly great individuals. And I believe you indeed possess the potential to accomplish unprecedented feats. Orion's expression brightened at Edgar's praise, his determination solidifying further. The gentle rumbling of the carriage wheels continued steadily, carrying them smoothly toward the Hellstorm estate. The obsidian carriage smoothly came to a halt before the grand entrance of the Hellstorm estate. Orion stepped out first, breathing in the fresh, crisp air that lingered pleasantly with the scent of meticulously tended gardens. Edgar calmly descended afterward, straightening his posture, while Lucan hopped down with a theatrical stretch and yawn. Orion turned toward the two of them, a glint of enthusiasm in his clear eyes. Uncle Edgar, brother Lucan, let's head to the training ground. I'd like you both to train with me again. Edgar nodded immediately, his demeanor composed and professional as always. Certainly, young master. Regular practice is always beneficial. Lucan, however, dramatically feigned exhaustion, letting out an exaggerated groan. Training again? Didn't you already have enough exercise in that damn tower today, young master? Must you always torment poor Lucan? Orion smiled lightly, giving Lucan a mildly amused glance. Oh? And here I thought a demon as strong as you would enjoy some healthy exercise. Lucan clutched his chest dramatically, eyes wide in mock offense. Healthy exercise? You're clearly trying to kill me slowly. Ah, the cruelty of youth. Edgar chuckled softly, shaking his head gently at Lucan's theatrics. Enough drama, Lucan. The young master wishes to practice, and it's our duty to help him. Lucan let out a resigned sigh, shoulders drooping exaggeratedly. Very well. Since I accepted the payment, then I must see it through. Orion chuckled lightly, leading them toward the training grounds situated behind the Hellstorm mansion. The training area was an expansive space, well kept with smooth stone flooring etched subtly with runic designs that shimmered faintly beneath the late afternoon sunlight. Ornate weapon racks lined the edges, holding an impressive variety of polished blades and practice equipment. Taking his position calmly in the center of the training ground, Orion drew his obsidian sword, its dark blade gleaming softly. Edgar and Lucan took their positions opposite him, each wielding training swords that mirrored their preferred fighting styles. Let's begin, Orion said calmly, eyes sharpening instantly with intense focus. In a synchronized movement, Edgar and Lucan surged forward, their attacks seamless and coordinated, reflecting years of combat experience. Orion met their combined assault with measured precision, his swordsmanship fluid and steady, calmly analyzing and adapting to their tactics. Each strike, parry, and dodge was executed cleanly and thoughtfully, showcasing his remarkable growth in combat instinct and spatial awareness. After a prolonged exchange, Orion saw an ideal moment to reveal the fruits of his recent training. His mana surged subtly, quickly enveloping his obsidian blade in a vivid crimson aura, the unmistakable power of his newly mastered fire sword aura. Edgar's eyes widened sharply in genuine astonishment. Lucan nearly stumbled backward, blurting out, "Holy shit! You already learned fire sword aura, young master?" Orion merely smiled faintly, pressing forward with renewed vigor. His strikes became noticeably fiercer, each blow infused with controlled flames that left faint, lingering warmth in the air. Remarkable! Edgar praised earnestly, admiration evident in his voice. Young master, the speed of your progress never ceases to amaze me. Lucan recovered quickly, laughing incredulously. Seriously, young master, are you even human at this point? I barely finished complaining about your training frequency, and here you are with another ridiculous breakthrough. Just wait and watch. Orion said with a smirk. The exchange continued with even greater intensity. Orion skillfully utilized his fire sword aura to withstand their combined offense, continually pushing his own limits. Chapter 228, Going to rest after another intense period of combat, Orion saw another opportunity. He shifted the flow of mana within him, channeling vibrant green energy onto his blade. Within seconds, his obsidian sword glowed vividly with a calm yet resilient emerald hue, the wood sword aura. Edgar visibly halted for a split second, genuine shock registering clearly across his composed face. Lucan openly gaped, dramatically throwing his arms up. "Are you kidding me right now, young master? A second sword aura already? Are you secretly some ancient monster in disguise?" Orion chuckled lightly at Lucan's exaggerated disbelief, calmly executing a graceful combination of attacks. The woodsword aura's adaptability and resilience allowed him to fluidly alternate between offensive and defensive tactics, adjusting smoothly to their shifting strategies. Edgar quickly regained composure, eyes glinting with profound pride. "Incredible, young master. Achieving mastery over 2 elemental sword auras in such rapid succession. Truly astonishing." Lucan shook his head dramatically, laughing helplessly. "At this rate, young master, you'll exhaust all surprises by next week. Can you slow down a little and let us mere mortals catch our breath?" Orion merely smiled faintly, focusing deeply on the practice without revealing the full scope of his progress. He debated showing his thunder sword aura as well, but decided that showing off 2 sword auras at once was enough of a shock for the two of them. Eventually, Orion lowered his sword calmly, signaling the end of their rigorous practice session. His breathing was slightly quickened, sweat trickling gently down his face, yet his eyes gleamed vibrantly with deep satisfaction and confidence. Edgar approached calmly, a respectful nod accompanying his genuine praise. "Young master, today you have again far exceeded our expectations. Your talent and diligence are truly unmatched." Lucan wiped imaginary tears dramatically, sighing theatrically. "If this continues, I fear I may never again win a single spar. My fragile pride is at stake here." Orion laughed gently, shaking his head at Lucan's antics. "Your pride seems to recover quickly enough, brother Lucan." Lucan grinned widely, nodding confidently. "Indeed, young master. It's one of my best qualities." Edgar chuckled quietly, placing a supportive hand on Orion's shoulder. "Excellent progress today, young master. You should now rest for the day. You had a long day at the academy as well." Orion nodded in agreement, sheathing his obsidian sword. "All right then." After bidding Edgar and Lucan good night, Orion returned inside the mansion, the vast corridors illuminated gently by the warm glow of mana lamps. A calm silence lingered through the estate, broken only occasionally by the muffled footsteps of servants carrying out their evening tasks. Orion moved steadily, eventually reaching the comforting solitude of his personal chambers where Rena and Fiora waited for him. Smiling lightly towards them in greeting, he walked with them to take a relaxing bath, letting the soothing heat seep into his muscles. The faint fragrance of herbs and mineral-infused water enveloped him, easing the tension from his arduous day. Afterward, the two of them dressed him in comfortable clothes before heading out to do their own things. After that, he went to join Eldrick and Celine for a sumptuous dinner while telling them about the day's events. The two of them listened to him with great attention. After finishing dinner, he went to Seraph's room and chatted with her for a while. It was, as usual, him chatting and her listening. Then he went to his room and sat down comfortably on the plush chair beside his polished wooden study desk. He then spent some time chatting leisurely with Lumi, recounting the day's events in greater detail. "Master, today was so incredible. Learning 3 new sword auras in such a short time, you're definitely going to become the strongest." Lumi excitedly chirped, her holographic form appearing brightly on his desk, gently swaying in a playful dance. Orion chuckled softly, leaning back into his chair with a contented sigh. "Yes, it felt incredible indeed. I honestly wasn't expecting to comprehend them so rapidly, but practicing extensively inside the tower really accelerated my progress." He shifted his gaze thoughtfully toward the intricately carved ceiling, speaking quietly yet confidently. Not only the sword auras, but learning all 108 primary runes thoroughly within just a week, that alone is already astonishing. It really was amazing, Master. Most students take months just to master a fraction of that. Your comprehension is off the charts. Lumi exclaimed, her cheerful expression full of admiration. Orion smiled faintly, shaking his head gently. Maybe, but it's also thanks to the excellent foundation I already have. Still, I must admit, learning to combine multiple sword auras simultaneously fascinates me greatly. Seeing that echo today truly opened my eyes to new possibilities. Lumi paused, curiously tilting her head as she studied him closely. Master, are you really considering trying to fuse elements? It sounded incredibly dangerous from what Uncle Edgar said. Orion exhaled slowly, his expression turning slightly more serious. You're right. After listening to Uncle Edgar, I understand how unrealistic attempting elemental fusion at my current level would be, especially considering the high affinity I have for multiple elements. With my powerful affinities, the backlash from failed fusion attempts could be devastating. It's a path better left unexplored until I'm much stronger. Then what will you do, Master? Lumi asked softly, genuine curiosity and mild concern mixing in her voice. Orion's eyes brightened slightly, excitement filling his clear gaze. I've been thinking seriously about mastering dual swords. If fusion is out of reach for now, dual-wielding swords might offer a more feasible path to utilizing my multiple elemental affinities effectively. Oh. Dual sword fighting like that echo, Master? Wouldn't it be hard to learn, especially with two different elements at once? Lumi questioned inquisitively, leaning forward excitedly. Orion nodded calmly, acknowledging her valid concerns. What is easy in this world? And it's much easier compared to fusion of two elements. And with my comprehension, I don't think I will take long to master dual swords. Lumi's floating screen buzzed, clearly supporting his decision. That sounds amazing, Master. If anyone can achieve something like that, it's definitely you. Lumi believes in you wholeheartedly. Orion chuckled softly, fondness clear in his gentle gaze. Thank you, Lumi. Your cheerfulness is contagious. Lumi twirled joyfully, beaming brightly. Lumi will always support Master, no matter what path you choose. He laughed gently at her joyful antics, glancing toward the neatly organized bookshelf beside his desk. His eyes lingered thoughtfully upon the runesmithing book he had purchased from the Academy library. Anyway, Orion said calmly, extending his hand and retrieving the thick, meticulously bound tome from the storage ring, I've spent enough time speculating tonight. I think it's time I start studying runesmithing. Grandma would be happy with it. Settling back comfortably onto his plush bed, Orion carefully opened the book. The title glimmered slightly beneath the faint mana illumination, Runesmithing, Fundamentals and Techniques. The neatly written text, precise diagrams, and meticulously illustrated rune formations immediately caught his interest. Master is studying even more now? Aren't you tired after such a long day? Lumi asked gently, a slight pout forming on her cute holographic face. Orion chuckled softly, shaking his head as he flipped carefully through the introductory chapters. I am slightly tired, Lumi, but not tired enough to sleep early. And I'm also excited to read new things. Such as runesmithing, alchemy, and spirit arts. Lumi nodded approvingly, her expression turning serious and supportive. Then Lumi will quietly cheer you on from here, Master. Good luck. Orion chuckled softly, haha, let's read together then. Chapter 229, reading about runesmithing. Orion carefully opened the beautifully bound book, feeling a subtle sense of anticipation. The thick pages, cool beneath his finger, felt good to the touch, each containing neatly printed text and intricate diagrams. The soft glow of the mana lamps in his room illuminated the detailed illustrations vividly, drawing his eyes deeper into the complexity and allure of the runesmithing arts. The first chapter, Introduction to Runesmithing, immediately captured Orion's attention, prompting him to read the initial sentences aloud softly. Runesmithing is the profound art of imbuing weapons, armor, and artifacts with magical runes, elevating mundane items into powerful tools capable of channeling the elemental forces of nature itself. He continued reading for a while before he paused thoughtfully, turning slightly toward Lumi's glowing hologram. So, essentially, runesmithing transforms ordinary equipment into powerful magical gear. It's entirely different from blacksmithing, which simply shapes materials without magical infusion. Lumi tilted her holographic head thoughtfully, her eyes glinting with curiosity. But master, wouldn't a normal blacksmith also forge weapons with mana-conductive materials? What's the key difference then? Orion nodded, smiling gently at her insightful question. Good point, Lumi. According to this book, the key difference is intent and methodology. Blacksmiths shape and temper materials, possibly using mana-infused metals, but runesmiths specifically engrave precise runes, carefully structuring mana pathways inside. It's the difference between shaping something and giving it a magical purpose. Lumi bobbed enthusiastically. Oh, I see. So, runesmiths are sort of magical blacksmiths who work more with mana than physical strength? Exactly, Orion agreed, turning the page to the second chapter titled Weapon Anatomy and Core Components. Here it explains the critical components of a rune-forged weapon, its core, channel lines, and rune slots. Every weapon crafted this way has a precise internal structure. He carefully studied a diagram, which illustrated an elegant longsword, drawn meticulously. See here, Lumi? The core serves as the mana storage and focal point. Channel lines are pathways that direct mana from the core through the weapon, enabling efficient flow and preventing overload. Finally, rune slots are precisely where primary runes are inscribed, guiding the mana and dictating effects. Lumi floated closer, studying the image closely. Wow, it's so detailed. The craftsmanship needed must be incredibly high. Orion chuckled softly, nodding appreciatively. That's why runesmiths are rare and valued highly. This precision requires tremendous skill and patience. As he turned to the third chapter, material selection and tier classifications, Orion grew even more absorbed. He read silently but shared a few key points with Lumi. Material selection significantly impacts elemental compatibility and absorption potential. For example, materials range from basic iron at Tier 1 to rare alloys like wind silver or bone steel at Tier 6 and above. Matching a weapon's material to its intended elemental affinity vastly improves its performance. So materials aren't just about strength or durability but elemental compatibility too? Lumi asked, clearly knowing the answer but just to entertain Orion. Precisely, Orion said, half to himself and half to Lumi, flipping to the fourth chapter, Runes and Their Types. Here, Orion slowed his pace, meticulously studying rune diagrams and elemental interaction rules. Listen to this, Lumi, when carving multiple runes, placement order matters greatly. Runes like flow must precede ignite to prevent mana conflict or rejection. Fascinating, isn't it? Oh, it's like building a puzzle, master. Everything needs to fit together perfectly. Yes, exactly. Rune interactions can significantly alter the weapon's effectiveness, or even cause dangerous backlash, Orion emphasized, his voice more and more immersed. Continuing onward to Chapter 5, Engraving Techniques, he carefully read about required tools like the runescriber blade and forging hammer, as well as proper rune carving procedures. He paused at an especially detailed section. To prevent backflow and rupture, carving runes must be done with precision and steady mana control. One slight mistake can destabilize the entire matrix and explode the weapon. That sounds risky, master. I suppose meticulous mana control would be crucial here, right? Lumi asked cautiously. Absolutely. So this is what Grandma meant by arcane magic back then. Such a precise level of mana control, Orion murmured softly, moving onward to the sixth chapter, Forming the Runic Matrix. He quickly absorbed the key information about connecting runes into circuits and creating templates suited to specific weapons. The seventh chapter, Elemental Infusion and Core Stabilization, intrigued Orion deeply. He skimmed various rituals involving elemental essence infusion, noting to Lumi, weapons must be bathed under precise conditions for each element. For instance, fire requires intense heat, while water demands calm, flowing streams of mana. That's really interesting. Do different elements need their own rituals? Yes, to stabilize the weapon's mana signature and fully integrate elemental properties, Orion explained briefly, shifting to the 8th chapter, Soul Sinking and Finalization. Here, his interest intensified. Soul binding is the final stage, temporarily or permanently connecting the weapon to its wielder's soul essence, vastly increasing compatibility and responsiveness. Lumi gasped slightly, eyes wide. Master, doesn't soul binding carry certain risks? Indeed. The book explicitly mentions that improper binding can harm the wielder's sea of consciousness or permanently damage their mana channels, Orion answered gravely. He briefly skimmed the 9th chapter, Troubleshooting and Known Failures, pausing at various warnings about rune failures and their dangerous consequences. The book also outlines procedures for safely dismantling failed circuits without triggering an explosion. Master must remember these points carefully. Lumi urged, visibly concerned. Don't worry, I won't court death so early, Orion reassured her with a chuckle, finally reaching the last chapter, Notable Examples and Legacy Designs. Here, he lingered longest, captivated by clear blueprints of legendary weapons like the renowned sword Stormseeker and the famous spear Earthshaper. Notes from historical runesmiths added fascinating insights, underscoring the complexity and potential of truly masterful creations. These examples are incredible, Lumi, Orion breathed softly, eyes glinting with newfound admiration. Each weapon here represents a lifetime of dedication and mastery. Lumi nodded vigorously, sharing his excitement. I can't wait for the day when Master creates a legendary weapon. Greater than over equal to nabla less than over equal to, /. Orion chuckled before flipping the book and opening the first page again. Well, it's time to start reading it from the start again. He began reading the book with much more focus this time, not even talking with Lumi about it. Time passed without him even noticing, and just as he reached the last page, a soft knock sounded at the door. Good morning, young master. Time to wake up. Rena's sweet voice came from outside the door. Orion raised his head as he looked toward the window. The sun had already started to rise. Oh? So much time passed? Yes, master. You have been reading for like 11 hours now. Oh well, it doesn't matter. I can stay awake for a few days without issue. Orion stretched gently, feeling mild stiffness in his shoulders from the prolonged hours spent meticulously reading through the dense runesmithing manual. A soft knock came again, accompanied by the same gentle voice from before. Young master, are you still sleeping? Rena's sweet and soothing tone brought an amused smile to Orion's lips. Come in, Rena. The polished wooden door swung open quietly, revealing Rena alongside Fiora. Both entered gracefully, stopping in mild surprise at seeing Orion already awake, comfortably seated at his desk with the thick runesmithing book open before him. Rena's eyes widened slightly, a gentle mixture of admiration and concern reflected in her expression. Young master, did you not sleep at all? You were awake studying this entire time? Chapter 230, Spirit Arts. Orion laughed softly, his gaze affectionate as he observed the two girls. Ah, well, I was so engrossed in my reading that time simply slipped away. Fiora fidgeted with her fingers, her voice held a hint of concern. Why, young master, you should take proper rest. It's not good for your body. Orion chuckled, rising from his chair and stretching again comfortably. Thank you for your concern, Fiora. But don't worry, I can go without sleep for a couple of days easily. However, a refreshing bath right now sounds perfect. Both girls exchanged a brief glance, smiles forming subtly on their faces. Of course, young master, Rena agreed softly, stepping closer with Fiora. We've already prepared the bath. Please come with us. Following the two girls toward the bathroom, he took a long and peaceful bath. After bathing, Orion dressed casually and made his way to the dining hall, feeling refreshed and relaxed. Eldrick and Celine were already waiting, both turning their heads slightly as Orion entered, their expressions warm and welcoming. Ah, lad, Eldrick greeted gently, eyes twinkling slightly with affection. Good morning. Did you sleep well? Orion smiled faintly, taking his seat comfortably at the grand dining table. Yes, I slept quite well. Celine gently nodded her head. That's good, you have been training very intensely for the past week. You should take proper rest now. Grandma, he didn't sleep at all. Lumi seemed as if ready to jump on the table and point her finger at Orion while snitching to Celine. Orion chuckled softly, ignoring Lumi. I know, Grandma. In fact, there is something that I want to discuss with you. Eldrick set down his utensils, leaning forward slightly, his expression curious. Oh? What's on your mind? Orion exhaled softly, gathering his thoughts clearly. I'm planning to take a few days off from the academy again. Currently, nothing interesting is happening there. My club members are busy training as well. And I'd prefer to spend this time mastering the side professions that I talked with Grandma about before. Eldrick stroked his beard thoughtfully, eyes shining with approval. Not a bad choice, lad. You've already done enough by climbing that damn tower and also learning sword auras inside of it. It isn't a bad idea to take a few days break and try your hand at a side profession to see if any of it suits you. Celine nodded warmly, clearly supportive. Indeed, my dear. You have already laid such a strong foundation in combat and elemental mastery. A few days to cultivate knowledge in side professions would benefit you greatly. Orion smiled, his gaze filling with appreciation. Thank you, Grandpa, Grandma. I'll try to read the alchemy book next. After finishing breakfast amidst pleasant conversation, Orion excused himself politely, swiftly returning to his room where he retrieved the alchemy book. The thick tome was beautifully bound in rich emerald-colored leather, and the gold lettering shimmered faintly, reading clearly, Fundamentals of Alchemy, Principles and Techniques. Settling comfortably in his chair once more, Orion eagerly opened the book, immersing himself instantly in the captivating world of alchemy. The pages held detailed explanations of alchemical tools, material properties, refining techniques, and potion brewing procedures, as well as details regarding herbs, where they grow, how to grow them, among other details. Every sentence fascinated Orion, driving him to read with deep concentration, absorbing every detail meticulously. Time flowed steadily as Orion focused solely on the text. Lunchtime came and passed unnoticed, his intense dedication causing him to skip it entirely. Even the routine training session with Edgar and Lucan slipped from his mind, his entire focus dedicated to thoroughly comprehending the intricate knowledge within the alchemical tome. Before long, gentle knocking sounded softly at his door once again, snapping Orion from his deep immersion. Fiora's voice came gently through the door, carrying a mild note of concern. Why, young master, it's time for dinner. Are you okay? Orion blinked slowly, rubbing his temples slightly from the mild mental strain. Ah, yes, Fiora. I'll be right there. Heading to dinner, he quietly joined Eldrick and Celine again, enjoying a peaceful, hearty meal together. Afterward, Orion made his usual visit to Seraph, gently conversing with her, ensuring she felt comforted and supported. Her more lively, hesitant eyes warmed Orion's heart, further reinforcing his determination to protect and support those around him. Returning finally to his room later that evening, Orion carefully closed the door, feeling deeply satisfied yet mentally exhausted from 2 consecutive intensive study sessions. Master, you must be feeling really drained now. Maybe you should rest properly tonight. Lumi softly suggested, gently concerned. Orion smiled faintly, gently nodding in agreement. Yes, you're right, Lumi. Even though my mental fortitude is strong, reading such long-ass books for 2 consecutive days definitely drained me. Approaching his bed, Orion jumped on the plush bed, releasing a deep, relieved breath. Sleep sounds perfect right now. I'll rest properly tonight and resume studying tomorrow. I'm done with alchemy today as well, only spirit arts are remaining. Sweet dreams, Master. You've definitely earned this rest. Lumi softly said, her tone filled with care and cheerfulness. Orion chuckled faintly, closing his eyes comfortably. Thank you, Lumi. Good night. Orion awoke refreshed the next morning, feeling fully recovered from the mental fatigue of intense study. Bright rays of sunlight filtered through the sheer curtains, painting his spacious bedroom in gentle shades of golden warmth. He stretched lazily, enjoying the brief moment of serene silence that lingered within the Hellstorm mansion. Following his daily routine, Orion leisurely bathed, allowing the warm water to wash away the last vestiges of exhaustion. After drying off and dressing comfortably, he descended gracefully toward the dining hall. Eldrick and Celine were already there, chatting softly over cups of fragrant tea. Good morning, Grandpa, Grandma, Orion greeted warmly, taking his seat opposite them. Good morning, lad, Eldrick responded cheerfully, his eyes twinkling as he examined Orion. You look far better today. I take it you rested properly this time? Orion chuckled lightly, nodding. Yes, I slept quite well last night after those study sessions. Truly feels like I'm alive again. Celine smiled gently, her expression warm and caring. I'm glad, dear. You should not neglect taking care of yourself. And don't try to ignite your life fire without asking me later. Life fire? Orion paused while eating, looking at Celine with curious eyes. Celine giggled, don't worry, you will get to know about it when you study. Orion exhaled a sigh while helplessly shaking his head. Breakfast passed pleasantly, filled with comfortable conversation. Once finished, Orion excused himself politely, feeling a familiar eagerness to continue his studies. Returning to his room, he carefully retrieved the final book from his recent collection, Fundamentals of Spirit Arts. This tome was bound in elegant midnight blue leather, delicate silver threads weaving an intricate pattern across its cover, hinting at its mystical contents. Settling himself comfortably at his polished wooden desk, Orion gently opened the book, its pages exuding a faint aura of profound mystery. Immediately captivated, he began to read aloud softly, allowing Lumi to follow closely along. Spirit arts are intrinsically tied to one's sea of consciousness. Mastery in this field requires both profound soul strength and refined spiritual sensitivity. Thus, only those possessing a naturally vast or exceptionally refined sea of consciousness can truly advance in these arts. Follow current novels on Freeway, B, novel.com. Chapter 231, Soul Path. Lumi floated near, her eyes sparkling with curiosity. Master, your sea of consciousness is extraordinary, so this path suits you perfectly. Orion smiled gently, nodding. Exactly my thought. Let's delve deeper. He turned the page to the section labeled Branches of Spirit Arts, noting carefully each of the categories. First, Spirit Contracts, Orion began, studying the beautifully illustrated diagrams of spirit sigils. Summoning and binding contracted beasts requires carefully crafting a spirit sigil within the sea of consciousness. Apparently, most practitioners can only manage up to 3 contracted beasts at their same level. Lumi tilted her head thoughtfully. Only 3? But Master, your sea of consciousness is massive, surely you can handle far more? Orion chuckled lightly, nodding thoughtfully. Likely, but let's not rush. The book specifically cautions against attempting to contract spirits beyond one's capacity due to severe soul backlash. He continued reading, high-ranking practitioners can evolve or fuse their summons, although such practices are incredibly rare and difficult. The book provides detailed instructions on summoning a basic spirit contract suitable for practitioners up to Tier 3 awakening grade. Lumi hummed curiously, hovering close to the diagrams. Master, imagine contracting a powerful spirit, how amazing would that be? Orion smiled gently, eyes bright with anticipation. Perhaps soon, Lumi. Let's master these basics first. Moving onward, he reached the second branch. Spirit communication allows understanding and dialogue with all sentient beings, whether beasts, artifacts, ancient constructs, or even sealed souls. This ability is essential for calming spirits, negotiation, or uncovering lost knowledge. Orion paused, intrigued by the illustrated runic symbols representing the basic spirit language. So there's a universal spirit language practitioners must learn. The book includes basic phrases and simple grammar structures necessary for preliminary communication. It's fascinating. Hee, maybe you can talk with that cow dragon directly, master. But she seems to know the common language as well. Orion chuckled softly. She's not a simple weapon spirit after all. But well, matters not. I will gestate my realm guardian spirit someday, it will come in handy then. Next came spirit sense. Orion's attention sharpened, carefully absorbing the descriptions. Practitioners can detect soul signatures, spiritual threads, hidden curses, or malicious intentions. Advanced users perceive even residual emotions or lingering echoes from the past. Orion thoughtfully murmured, this could be quite useful regarding Seraph. Not only to know if she has a curse or not, but also to know her emotions. Lumi nodded enthusiastically. You'd see through her right away, master. Thinking about a few things for a moment, Orion continued onward to soul techniques, noting immediately the caution in the author's tone. These arts directly impact an opponent's soul. Examples include Soul Pierce, Dream Bind, Karma Burn, and Echo Slash. Such techniques are devastating against cultivators who neglect proper soul defenses. Yet practitioners must first ignite the life fire within the sea of consciousness before safely practicing even basic soul techniques. Orion paused briefly, his expression serious. So this is what Grandma meant by life fire, huh? Looks like it's quite dangerous. I'll ask her for advice later. Finally, he reached spirit imbuement. His eyes lit up, fascinated by the possibilities outlined. Spirit artists collaborate with runesmiths to create spirit weapons, items with their own consciousness, self-growth potential, memory retention, and emotional bonds. Without spirit artists breathing life into them, these weapons remain mere tools. Lumi clapped her hands excitedly. Master, that would be incredible. A weapon that can grow and evolve alongside you. Orion shook his head. There must be restrictions. Otherwise, it's pretty impossible to grow alongside the user indefinitely. Well, we need to look further into this later. The final section summarized why spirit arts remained exceptionally rare, emphasizing the necessity for a powerful sea of consciousness, high soul strength, and innate spiritual sensitivity. Few cultivators possessed even rudimentary perception of spiritual threads, let alone mastered these skills safely. Orion closed the book momentarily, leaning back comfortably in his chair. His mind buzzed excitedly with possibilities, eagerly processing the incredible potential of the spirit arts. He imagined himself wielding such techniques, communicating with spirits, sensing hidden dangers, and crafting powerful spirit weapons. After a brief pause, Orion reopened the book, carefully studying the diagrams and instructions for crafting a basic spirit sigil to summon a contracted beast, diligently memorizing every detail. He repeatedly practiced the foundational spirit language phrases aloud, growing accustomed to their elegant yet unfamiliar sounds. Hours passed steadily, the sunlight shifting gently through his window. Orion's dedication kept him focused, meticulously absorbing the details and carefully building his foundational understanding. Occasionally, Lumi offered playful remarks, keeping the mood light and enjoyable. Eventually, Orion felt fully satisfied with his thorough comprehension of spirit arts at the awakening grade, up to tier 3. He exhaled contentedly, closing the beautifully bound book. Lumi bobbed cheerfully, clearly proud. Master, your dedication is truly amazing. You've learned 3 entire side professions' foundational books in mere days. Orion chuckled softly, standing slowly to stretch his slightly stiff limbs. Those were quite fun. Especially the spirit art one. Not only did it open a whole new path for me, but it also helped me to know about the spirit language. Now, the next step will be choosing which of these professions to cultivate first. Orion exhaled gently, leaning back from his desk with a thoughtful sigh as he placed the book back inside his storage ring. Outside, the sky had darkened, stars slowly piercing the dark night, their distant glow reflecting softly through his large window. Deciding to sort through his thoughts, Orion rose slowly and walked toward his spacious bed. He lay down comfortably, closing his eyes as the day's study sessions replayed vividly within his mind. The three paths of runesmithing, alchemy, and spirit arts unfolded clearly in his mind, each uniquely appealing. Runesmithing fascinated him with its precise craftsmanship and profound magical potential, while alchemy held versatile and invaluable utility in refining potions and herbs that could augment his cultivation. Yet it was spirit arts that intrigued him most deeply, especially given his naturally vast sea of consciousness. The sheer variety of abilities, from contracting powerful spirits, communicating with entities, sensing hidden dangers, to wielding potent soul techniques, excited him immensely. He smiled faintly, already envisioning the possibilities. He remained lost in quiet contemplation for a while until a gentle knock sounded at his door, accompanied by Rena's soft voice, "Young master, dinner is ready. Everyone is waiting." Orion opened his eyes slowly, rising gracefully from the bed. "Thank you, Rena. I'll be right there." Upon reaching the dining hall, he was warmly greeted by Celine, Eldrick, and Fiora, the scent of delicious food filling the air. As they settled into dinner, Orion turned toward Celine, his voice calm yet genuinely curious. "Grandma, earlier I came across something called life-fire ignition in the spirit arts. Can you explain more about this soul training path?" Celine's eyes brightened thoughtfully. "Oh, you already read about life-fire ignition? It's an essential milestone for cultivating the soul." She began calmly. "The first stage is life-fire ignition. The life fire is awakened within your sea of consciousness, appearing as a flickering spiritual flame. At first, it's shapeless and unstable, providing basic soul awareness and resistance against low-tier illusions." Orion nodded thoughtfully. "So it enhances clarity and offers foundational defense for the mind and soul?" Chapter 232, Walking on Three Paths, Celine smiled approvingly. "Exactly. It's also necessary for more precise rune crafting and improved spellcasting clarity." "What about the second stage, Grandma?" Orion asked, eagerly absorbing her words. "Stage 2 is called soul shaping. Here, the life fire gradually molds itself into your spiritual outline, starting as a featureless humanoid silhouette, gradually gaining more detail reflecting your spiritual strength and emotional balance." Orion leaned forward, intrigued. "This stage grants abilities like spiritual communication and basic soul techniques?" Celine nodded gently. "Yes, precisely. At this stage, you can form contracts, communicate with artifacts, or even summon spiritual weapons. Your mental defenses also greatly improve." Orion paused momentarily, then asked carefully, "And the final stage?" Celine smiled knowingly. "The third stage is soul embodiment. At this stage, the life fire condenses into a complete spiritual duplicate of yourself, fully detailed, stable, and powerful. It unlocks advanced soul techniques and grants formidable resistance against advanced mental intrusions and spiritual corruption." Orion exhaled softly, his eyes alight with newfound understanding. "So, only after reaching the soul embodiment stage can I fully utilize the most powerful soul techniques?" Celine giggled lightly, her gaze affectionate yet teasing. "Not exactly, my dear. There are stages even higher, just as there are levels beyond the 9th grade. But reaching the soul embodiment stage would mean standing at the peak of the awakening grade. You should first focus on attaining that." Eldrick suddenly burst into hearty laughter, slapping the table with gusto. "Ha ha ha. I can't wait to see how this little monster will manage to master all three paths." Celine shot him a sidelong glance, her lips curving into a playful smirk. "He'll certainly manage it better than someone I know. You only managed to master a single path, even after so many years." Eldrick's grin faltered slightly, his lips twitching in exaggerated indignation. "Oi. That's unfair. Back then, I was too eager to pursue pure strength, and now I'm far too powerful to start another path from scratch." Celine huffed softly, pretending to dismiss his excuse with a wave of her delicate hand. "Exactly my point. So you should at least allow Orion to train in peace without your disturbance." Orion chuckled quietly at their playful banter, a gentle smile spreading across his face. "Don't worry, Grandma. I'll rest well tonight and begin exploring this path tomorrow." Celine smiled warmly, giving Orion an encouraging nod. Good. Remember, my dear, steady progress always wins over haste. Eldrick leaned back comfortably in his chair, folding his arms with a grin. True, lad. Though I have a feeling you'll give us a surprise. Orion merely smiled. We'll see, Grandpa. After finishing dinner, Orion excused himself politely, rising from the dining table with a warm nod toward Eldrick and Celine. He quietly exited the grand hall, his footsteps echoing softly along the corridor as he made his way toward Seraph's quarters. Upon arriving outside Seraph's door, Orion paused briefly, gently knocking with a familiar rhythm. After a brief silence, he pushed the door open slowly and stepped inside. Seraph sat quietly by the large window, gazing thoughtfully out into the serene, moonlit garden. Her green hair cascaded softly down her shoulders, catching faint traces of moonlight. She turned, noticing Orion's arrival, and offered a delicate, hesitant nod. Orion nodded back warmly, stepping forward until he stood comfortably beside her chair. Good evening, Seraph. You seem in better spirits today. They spent some time together as Orion shared today's events with her, which were mostly about him reading books and discovering a new training path. The atmosphere remained relaxed, their conversation gently soothing the remnants of tension and anxiety lingering in Seraph's heart. Eventually, Orion sensed her slowly becoming sleepy, her eyelids growing heavier with each passing moment. He smiled softly, his voice gentle. It seems you're tired. Rest well, Seraph. She nodded slowly, her eyes looking at him with a hint of warmth. Leaving her room, Orion headed back toward his own room, which was just beside hers. Upon entering his room, Orion immediately moved toward his bed, deciding to rest early for the long day ahead tomorrow. Without hesitation, he dropped comfortably onto the mattress, feeling his body relax instantly. Closing his eyes, Orion quickly drifted into a deep, restful sleep, his breathing gradually becoming steady and calm. Hours passed unnoticed, the night giving way gradually to morning. Sunlight gently filtered through the curtains, eventually rousing Orion from his slumber. He awoke refreshed, stretching luxuriously before proceeding through his usual morning routine. After bathing and dressing comfortably, Orion headed toward the dining hall to join Eldrick and Celine for breakfast. The morning meal was peaceful, filled with casual conversation, laughter, and familial warmth. Once breakfast concluded, Celine rose gracefully from her chair, beckoning Orion with a gentle wave. Come along, my dear. It's time I properly introduce you to the soul path. Orion nodded eagerly, standing to follow Celine toward her private study. Eldrick gave an approving nod, smiling fondly as the two of them departed. Orion followed his grandmother into her elegantly appointed study, the walls lined with shelves brimming with ancient texts, scrolls, and artifacts. He took a seat opposite Celine, the warm glow from nearby mana lamps casting a comfortable ambience throughout the room. Celine retrieved a delicate scroll from one of the nearby shelves, unrolling it carefully upon the polished desk between them. This technique, Orion, is known as the life fire ignition art. It's specifically designed to awaken and nurture your life fire, igniting the spiritual flame deep within your sea of consciousness. Orion studied the beautifully inscribed text carefully, fascination evident in his expression. How does it work exactly, Grandma? She smiled warmly, her eyes gentle yet serious. You must carefully follow the meditative chants and visualizations outlined within. Initially, your life fire will appear as a small, flickering spark, unstable and raw. You'll gradually stabilize and refine this flame through repeated practice, allowing it to become your spiritual foundation. Orion listened intently, absorbing each detail carefully. How long will it typically take to fully ignite the life fire? Celine's expression softened slightly, her voice patient and reassuring. For a normal individual, igniting and stabilizing their life fire usually requires weeks or even months of steady effort. But with your exceptional soul strength and vast sea of consciousness, I suspect you'll accomplish this far more quickly. Orion nodded thoughtfully, understood. I won't disappoint you, Grandma. I will train diligently. She smiled proudly, reaching out to gently pat his head. I have no doubt you will, my dear. Take your time. Patience is crucial at this stage. Meanwhile, outside the study, Eldrick sat leisurely in the mansion's grand hall, flipping casually through a thick, aged tome as sunlight gently illuminated the ornate surroundings. His peaceful moment was soon disrupted by a subtle yet unmistakable shift in the ambient mana, signaling an unexpected arrival. Looking up, Eldrick's gaze sharpened immediately, senses alert as footsteps echoed lightly toward the hall. A calm, graceful figure stepped smoothly into view, appearing as poised and serene as ever. Dina Lariel, her ash-gray hair cascading elegantly behind her and silver eyes calmly scanning the hall, approached with an easy confidence. She offered Eldrick a faint, polite smile, inclining her head slightly in greeting. "Good morning, Sir Eldrick. I apologize for the sudden visit, but there's an important matter I wish to discuss." Chapter 233, Donation. Eldrick raised an eyebrow, gazing curiously at Alariel as she entered the grand hall with an elegant stride. The sunlight streaming through tall, ornate windows bathed the expansive room in gentle warmth, illuminating the intricate carvings and polished furniture within. "Little girl, visiting without notice, Something important on your mind?" he asked, a faint smile tugging at his lips. Alariel tilted her head playfully, returning his smile with quiet amusement. "Aren't you going to invite me to sit first, Sir Eldrick?" Eldrick chuckled heartily, gesturing toward the cushioned seat opposite him. Come, no need for such formality between us. It isn't our first meeting, after all." "Haha, true enough," Alariel laughed softly, gracefully settling herself into the offered seat. Her silver eyes sparkled mischievously as she studied him. "You've grown younger, old man. Secretly taking rejuvenation elixirs?" Eldrick shook his head, a nostalgic expression passing across his face. "You and your jokes never change, little girl. Makes me recall that day I first brought you down from that mountain." Alariel's lips twitched involuntarily at the memory, her playful demeanor faltering briefly. "Must you always mention such ancient history?" "Ancient?" Eldrick laughed, genuinely amused. "It's barely been 2 decades. 73 years, she corrected him firmly, her eyes narrowing slightly. "Not everyone is a centuries-old monster like you, old man. We mortals feel every passing year keenly." Eldrick paused, momentarily surprised. "Has it truly been that long?" "Ah, time does slip away." Alariel regarded him thoughtfully, noting the peaceful air about him. "Yet, for you now, time seems to have finally slowed its relentless march." Eldrick smiled warmly, a gentle light flickering in his eyes as he thought of Orion. "Indeed. For the first time in centuries, I wish time would move slower, so she and I can savor these precious moments a bit longer." Alariel's expression softened, a note of empathy coloring her voice. "A golden age, though perhaps an inconvenient time for it to finally arrive." Eldrick merely shook his head, unconcerned. "Inconvenient perhaps for me, but perfect for Orion. Such turbulent times breed extraordinary heroes. I have no doubt he'll flourish in this era." Alariel leaned in slightly, curiosity sharpening her features. "Speaking of Orion, exactly how much more is he hiding?" Eldrick raised an eyebrow, acting clueless. What do you mean still hiding?" "I'm pretty sure he showed all the things he had during his time in the academy." She paused, momentarily taken in by his act, but quickly recovered, shaking her head gently. "Please don't try these games with me, Sir Eldrick. With your perceptiveness, it's impossible for Orion to hide anything significant from you." Eldrick's smile faded, replaced by a sudden intensity that chilled the air around them. His voice dropped to a quiet, dangerous calm. "And if he is hiding something, what of it?" Alariel felt a subtle shiver run down her spine, realizing she'd touched upon a sensitive point. "Relax, old man. You know me, I hold no ill intentions toward Orion. Quite the opposite." Realizing his reaction had been too strong, Eldrick let out a gentle sigh, relaxing visibly. "You're right. Forgive me, I tend to grow overprotective regarding Orion." She nodded in understanding. "I can understand that, after all, what happened to She stopped, realizing she was about to open old wounds. Anyway, he showed off his thunder affinity during his ascension of the tower. How much more is he hiding? Eldric's seriousness melted away into a relaxed smile. Ah, that would spoil his surprises for you, wouldn't it? Her eyes widened in genuine astonishment. So, he truly has even more hidden depths. Eldric chuckled softly, eyes twinkling with pride. Naturally. He's my grandson, after all. Alariel sighed softly in disbelief, leaning back in her chair. Both his son and grandson turned out to be monstrous talents. First Lucian, now Orion. I don't know what to think of this. Seeing her genuine astonishment, Eldric poured tea leisurely, placing a cup before her. Care for some tea while we talk? Taking the offered cup gracefully, Alariel's expression grew playful once more. Actually, there is something else. Your dear grandson nearly destroyed our origin mana pool. And it would take too big of a toll on the academy if we tried to fix it ourselves. How about you donate a little something to the academy? Eldric's eyes danced with amusement as he sipped his tea casually. Why should I do that? It's your academy's responsibility to provide for your students. If you can't manage that much, perhaps you should close your doors. Alariel's lips twitched in mild frustration. That pool would have sustained lots of students for months. I still can't fathom how Orion managed to absorb it entirely in one session. Eldric shrugged nonchalantly. Not my problem. Lowering her head slightly, Alariel took a deep breath to steady herself before raising her gaze sharply. You sent Orion to us to compete with others fairly, rather than depending on your personal treasures, correct? Eldric raised a curious brow. Indeed, that was my intention. She smiled triumphantly, seizing upon that point immediately. Then helping us repair the origin mana pool would align perfectly with that goal. Otherwise, by the time it's repaired, Orion would have already progressed beyond its usefulness, losing a valuable incentive for growth. Eldric's gaze turned thoughtful. You have a point. Improving the academy indirectly supports Orion without spoiling him directly. Alariel nodded vigorously, eyes shining. Precisely. Orion gets motivation and incentive, the academy also benefits, a win-win. After a long pause, Eldric finally nodded, retrieving a glowing crystal orb from his spatial ring. Immediately, dense ambient mana flooded the hall, powerful enough to suffocate most lower-level cultivators to death. This should be good enough for your academy, he said casually, tossing it lightly toward her. Alariel caught it instinctively, eyes widening dramatically as she recognized its value, her hands trembling. A paragon-grade origin mana vein? Your eyes are still sharp, little girl. But don't use it on yourself. Otherwise, I won't give you good stuff next time, he said with a slight smile. He had given her this both because of Orion and because he wanted to test her. The paragon-grade origin mana vein was good enough to significantly help even Alariel to progress further in her mana path. However, with Eldric's words, she would need to remove her selfish thoughts and use it for the betterment of the academy. She hesitated momentarily, a trace of longing flashing across her eyes. Taking a steady breath, she tucked it away reluctantly. I understand. Rest assured, I'll put it to good use. Satisfied, Eldric nodded calmly, not asking further about how she planned to use it or anything. The atmosphere relaxed again, their conversation drifting toward kingdom affairs and recent happenings. The demons have become more active again, Alariel remarked quietly, her eyes serious. The southern regions are already stained with blood. Eldric's gaze grew distant, thoughtful. I might need to head out in the next couple of days and make a trip toward the Empire to gather news about demon movements. Alariel's eyes flashed eagerly, exactly the development she'd hoped for. Rising gracefully, she bowed respectfully. Then I wish you safe travels, Sir Eldric. He chuckled lightly, waving a hand dismissively. Again with the formality? You never change. Smiling warmly, Alariel straightened up. Then I won't take more of your time. I'll await good news from your journey. Eldric stood as well, stretching lightly. I should speak with Edgar now about certain arrangements. Alariel nodded understandingly, giving one final graceful bow. Thank you for your hospitality. With quiet footsteps, she turned and departed the grand hall, leaving Eldrick gazing thoughtfully after her retreating figure, his mind already focused on preparations for the journey ahead. Chapter 234, Life Fire Ignition. At another corner of the mansion, Orion sat across from Celine inside her study, where she had explained the soul path to him. Orion carefully opened the ancient scroll Celine had handed him, feeling its delicate texture beneath his fingertips. The parchment was a deep ivory hue, inscribed meticulously with elegant characters that radiated a subtle, calming aura. Taking a deep breath, Orion began to read the technique carefully, absorbing every phrase, diagram, and subtle instruction. The Life Fire Ignition art detailed precise meditative chants and intricate visualizations intended to awaken and stabilize the spiritual flame deep within the sea of consciousness. Gradually, Orion's surroundings faded from his awareness as he became fully engrossed in the scroll. His mind carefully visualized each step outlined, how to learn to control his soul energy in his sea of consciousness, how to gently coax the spark of life fire into existence, and methods for stabilizing its initial volatile state. Hours silently passed unnoticed, the gentle rays of the morning sun gradually shifting into the golden tones of late afternoon, bathing the study in a warm amber glow. Orion remained motionless, eyes fixed intensely upon the scroll, every fiber of his being committed entirely to comprehending this essential technique. Eventually, a soft sigh escaped his lips as he finally raised his head, stretching his stiff shoulders slightly. He glanced casually toward the window, only to freeze in mild surprise at the sight of the sun dipping toward the horizon, painting the sky with brilliant hues of crimson and gold. It's already evening? Orion murmured softly, his voice filled with surprise. He turned quickly, noticing Celine seated across from him with a gentle, amused smile playing across her face. She nodded warmly, eyes twinkling affectionately. You truly immerse yourself completely when studying, my dear. Hours pass unnoticed, don't they? Orion gave a chuckle, lightly shaking his head. I didn't realize I'd been so deeply absorbed. It felt like only moments had passed. Celine's smile grew tender, her voice soft yet filled with quiet pride. And that's precisely what distinguishes great mages and true scholars. Your ability to focus entirely, disregarding everything around you, is a gift that very few possess. Such concentration will carry you far along your cultivation paths. Orion smiled appreciatively at her compliment. Thank you, Grandma. But still. I didn't mean to keep you here all day. Celine laughed softly, shaking her head reassuringly. Nonsense, my dear. Watching you grow and absorb knowledge brings me great joy. You've made remarkable progress already. I'm genuinely impressed by how thoroughly you've grasped the fundamentals of this technique. She paused momentarily, her expression turning gently serious. Still, it's important to pace yourself. Comprehending and properly igniting the life fire requires steady, patient practice. Rest tonight, let your mind assimilate the insights you've gained, and tomorrow we'll continue your training. Orion nodded obediently, respecting her wisdom. Understood, Grandma. I'll do as you advise. Celine reached out and gently touched Orion's head affectionately. Good. Let's go and have dinner now, and then you can spend some time with Seraph afterward. Yes, Grandma, Orion replied warmly, carefully rolling the scroll closed before returning it to Celine. He stood slowly, stretching his body after hours of stillness, feeling both mentally invigorated and slightly fatigued from intense concentration. After exiting the study alongside Celine, Orion made his way to the dining hall, where Eldrick waited with a gentle smile. Dinner was a peaceful affair, filled with light-hearted banter and familial warmth. Eldrick recounted amusing stories of his younger days, while Celine shared subtle insights about cultivating the soul path. Once dinner concluded, Orion excused himself politely, walking calmly toward Seraph's room. He knocked softly, entering only after hearing her gentle acknowledgement. Seraph sat by her usual window, gazing quietly out into the moonlit gardens beyond, her emerald green hair softly illuminated by the silvery moonlight. After having a short chat with her for a while, he stood up and bid her farewell. Returning to his own room, Orion felt a gentle wave of fatigue wash over him. He climbed into bed, allowing his mind to slowly process the extensive knowledge gained today. Master really learned a lot today. That life-fire ignition technique was so complicated. Greater than over equal to less than over equal to. He opened his eyes, seeing her floating screen hovering above him. He chuckled. Yes, it was probably the most complicated technique I have seen so far. And I don't know how long it will take me to ignite my life fire. But you learned it thoroughly, Master. Now all that remains is mastering it. He gently smiled and nodded. Yes, it will probably take longer than I expect though. I just have this feeling. The two of them continued to chat for a while longer before Orion felt his eyelids becoming heavier as he slowly fell asleep. Orion awoke late as usual, feeling refreshed and clear-headed after the restful sleep. He completed his daily routine, and trained in both the mana and physique path a little despite reaching the peak of the 3rd tier. After having a refreshing bath, he headed to the dining hall to enjoy a leisurely breakfast with Eldrick and Celine. As Orion entered, the gentle aroma of freshly baked bread and herbal tea greeted him warmly. Eldrick, already seated, gave him a nod in greeting, while Celine smiled affectionately and gestured for Orion to join them at the table. Feeling well rested today? Eldrick asked lightly, sipping his tea casually. Orion nodded with a relaxed smile. Yes, Grandpa. I slept quite nicely and feel ready to train the soul technique now. Good, Celine interjected gently. Your mind and spirit must be perfectly rested before attempting to ignite your life fire. Remember, patience and calmness will guide you best. Orion inclined his head respectfully. I understand, Grandma. I'll keep your words firmly in mind. After breakfast concluded, Celine rose gracefully and gestured toward Orion with a smile. Shall we head to my study now? We'll go through the details once more before you attempt the technique. Yes, Grandma, Orion replied eagerly, rising smoothly from his seat. Together, they walked through the mansion's tranquil corridors to Celine's private study. The room remained as peaceful and serene as ever, rows of neatly arranged scrolls and books surrounded by elegantly carved shelves bathed in warm amber hues of morning sunlight. Celine motioned for Orion to sit across from her, gracefully settling herself down. She unfolded the scroll once more, laying it carefully before him. Review it carefully again, Orion. Visualize each step, each detail. Let your comprehension be clear and focused. Orion carefully re-examined the life fire ignition art, eyes narrowing in intense concentration as he reviewed each intricate instruction, chant, and visualization. After thoroughly imprinting each step clearly in his mind, he inhaled deeply and closed his eyes, entering a deep meditative state. Within moments, Orion found himself immersed within the boundless expanse of his sea of consciousness. Here, his senses sharpened significantly, awareness extending across the tranquil expanse of his consciousness, crystal and mana threads shimmering faintly around him. Following the instructions, Orion delicately guided strands of soul energy, shaping and directing them carefully, searching within himself for the spark that would ignite the life fire. Time became a vague concept as Orion tirelessly concentrated, pouring more and more soul energy into the formation of the delicate flame. And the soul energy was closer to his will as he tried to focus all his mind to look around the consciousness. Gradually, Orion began to feel something, faint warmth, the tiniest hint of a flicker. Encouraged, he concentrated even harder, pushing his soul energy to its absolute limit. However, each attempt at coaxing the fragile spark into a stable flame seemed just barely out of reach. Eventually, exhaustion seeped through him, his sea of consciousness gently signaling its limit. Sensing that pushing further would be counterproductive, Orion slowly opened his eyes, exhaling deeply with mild frustration. Celine, patiently observing throughout, offered a gentle, reassuring smile. You felt it, didn't you? Orion nodded, his voice softly laced with both relief and lingering frustration. Yes, Grandma. I was so close, yet it slipped away each time. Celine reached across the table, softly patting his hand. Don't rush yourself, Orion. No one masters a soul technique in a single day. What you've experienced today, sensing that tiny spark, is already extraordinary. Take pride in it, and be patient. Chapter 235, Creating Weapon. Orion exhaled gently, feeling his tension slowly dissipate under her comforting words. You're right. Perhaps I expected too much at once. Celine chuckled softly, eyes twinkling affectionately. That's only natural, given your talents. But cultivation of the soul demands patience and persistence above all. Orion smiled gently, calming down as he heard her kind words. After a quiet moment, Celine tilted her head slightly in curiosity. Tell me, dear, after this step, what do you plan to do for the day next? Orion straightened slightly, eyes brightening with enthusiasm. I've been thinking about it carefully, Grandma. To become a skilled runesmith, I must first master traditional blacksmithing. I'd like to learn that craft next. Celine's expression brightened immediately, her face lighting with evident joy. A wise decision, my dear. Mastery in blacksmithing builds the perfect foundation for runesmithing. Come, let me show you something. Intrigued, Orion followed Celine out of the study and toward the rear of the mansion, where a spacious smithy awaited. Upon entering, Orion instantly recognized the place where Celine had forged his realm guardian and black dragon spear. Memories of the glowing molten metals and runic inscriptions briefly flashed through his mind. The smithy was a vast, meticulously organized workspace equipped with multiple forging stations, anvils, hammers of varying sizes, and shelves laden with ingots of precious metals, ores, and rare alloys. A faint warmth permeated the space, remnants of past forging sessions lingering gently in the air. Celine walked gracefully through the workspace, her movements precise yet familiar. She gestured toward the central forge, the fire currently extinguished. This is where your sword and spear were born, Orion. The path of blacksmithing is demanding and rigorous. You would need to train well for it. She glanced at Orion fondly, eyes softening with pride. By mastering the forge, you learn discipline, precision, patience, and resilience, qualities invaluable to a mage and runesmith alike. Orion stepped closer, carefully examining the neatly arranged tools and materials, excitement building within him. Don't worry, Grandma. You know me well enough to know about my discipline. I want to become a blacksmith first, so I can truly understand the art of runesmithing. Celine smiled warmly, placing a gentle hand on his shoulder. I have no doubt you will, my dear. Let me show you around the smithy today, and from tomorrow you can learn it for yourself. But don't neglect your own training. It's even more important than the side professions. I know, Grandma. Don't worry, I won't place the cart before the horse. He chuckled and replied. Let me show you around the smithy then. She softly said before guiding Orion through the smithy, each section resonating with echoes of meticulous craftsmanship. This, Celine began softly, gesturing toward a heavy, well-worn anvil at the center, is the heart of any forge. It's upon this anvil that raw metal takes shape and finds purpose. Orion approached slowly, running his fingers gently over the cool surface of the anvil, feeling faint traces of mana lingering within, memories of countless weapons forged by Celine's expert hands. He imagined vividly how his own sword and spear were once mere glowing steel, gradually refined and shaped by her precise, rhythmic hammer strikes. Moving onward, Celine led him toward the forge itself, a sturdy stone construction with a deep firepot designed to maintain intense, concentrated heat. This is the forge fire. Proper control over its heat is crucial. Too hot, the metal will burn; too cool, it'll never soften sufficiently. You must learn to understand the flame, dear. Orion nodded intently, absorbing her every word with deep concentration. Celine continued, her voice warm yet serious. Each metal type has its own techniques, requiring different heat intensities, different rhythms of hammering, and unique cooling methods. He followed her to neatly organized shelves brimming with carefully labeled ingots of metals, mortal steel, special alloys such as bone steel and wind silver, and other exotic ores. This selection of metals is crucial, she explained gently. Mastering the smithy means knowing not only how to shape steel but choosing the right steel for the intended purpose. Orion's eyes brightened with understanding. So, a sword designed for speed and flexibility might require wind silver, while something heavier or denser, like a spearhead, might benefit from bone steel? Celine smiled approvingly. Precisely. Such discernment is what separates ordinary smiths from true masters. Finally, she showed him the detailed grinding and polishing area, where whetstones, polishing stones, and grinders waited in perfect arrangement. Here is where a weapon's final beauty emerges. Grinding, sharpening, and polishing require patience and subtlety. Rush, and you ruin the blade; hesitate, and your edge dulls before it's fully born. Orion felt a surge of excitement as he took in the entire smithy, appreciating even more deeply the artistry and complexity involved. Thank you, Grandma. I promise to respect this art and learn diligently. I know you will, Celine gently replied, patting his shoulder warmly. Now rest and prepare yourself, dear. Tomorrow, the real work begins. The next day arrived swiftly, finding Orion standing confidently before the forge. Dressed in practical clothing suitable for forging, he carefully tied his hair back to avoid interference and glanced toward Celine, who stood nearby, offering a reassuring nod. Begin, dear, she instructed gently. Feel the process first without magic or spells. Learn how mortal smiths forge their blades. Taking a deep, steadying breath, Orion approached the forge, scooping coal into the fire pot. Carefully stacking kindling and scraps of paper beneath, he applied oil sparingly, then sparked the flame. A gentle crackle quickly gave way to a vibrant, roaring blaze as Orion worked the bellows, pumping air rhythmically to intensify the heat. Soon the forge glowed brilliantly, emitting waves of intense heat. Orion, focused and calm, selected a sturdy ingot of steel, ideal for his first sword, and secured it firmly with iron tongs. Carefully, he placed the steel within the roaring flames, watching closely as it slowly transformed to a bright orange-yellow, glowing vividly in the intense heat. When it reached the perfect temperature, precisely when the metal began radiating the desired warmth and color, Orion swiftly pulled it from the forge. Immediately, he placed it upon the anvil and began hammering firmly but amateurishly. Each hammer strike was hard and struck the steel. At first, the heavy blows were awkward, somewhat unsteady, but gradually Orion found his rhythm, learning to channel his strength through the hammer into the heated steel. As the blade slowly elongated, Orion carefully focused on the profile, gently shaping the steel into the rough form of a sword, slightly tapering toward the point. With each reheating, hammering, and shaping cycle, Orion grew increasingly attuned to the metal's behavior, how it responded to heat, pressure, and timing. Celine watched with pride, occasionally offering gentle reminders or subtle corrections. Watch your angle here, Orion, she instructed softly, guiding his hammer hand gently. Each strike must have a clear purpose about what it's shaping. Think clearly about what shape you're guiding the metal toward. He nodded, refocusing himself fully, sweat trickling down his brow from exertion and heat. Gradually, Orion's movements became smoother and more confident. He carefully shaped the tang, hammering out the grip's basic form, then reheated the blade for normalization, allowing it to cool slowly. The process continued carefully through grinding, shaping the blade meticulously while leaving the edge dull, ensuring no brittleness formed prematurely. Hours passed quickly, and soon Orion found himself preparing for heat treatment. Celine guided him patiently through reheating the blade evenly until it glowed red-hot, then swiftly plunging it into a barrel of oil. Flames erupted briefly before subsiding, the blade hardened yet brittle. Following her guidance, he tempered it carefully, gently reheating the sword in controlled intervals, meticulously watching as the blade regained toughness while maintaining hardness. Finally, Orion polished and sharpened his sword patiently, watching it transform into a refined weapon. Once completed, he attached a simple yet sturdy guard and wooden handle, securing everything tightly. As Orion lifted his completed sword, pride and satisfaction washed over him. Though basic and unadorned, it felt profoundly meaningful, the product of his own dedication, patience, and careful craftsmanship. Celine approached warmly, smiling softly at him. Wasn't that easy, dear? Orion nodded his head. Yes, it was surprisingly much easier than I had anticipated. She softly giggled. That's because you have much higher control over your body after reaching the third tier of the body path. So you learned where to hit and how much strength to put very clearly. What about runes? He eagerly asked, not even looking at how much time had passed. Chapter 236, Fleeting Time. Celine smiled and said, well, didn't you read about them? Try to engrave them. Orion's eyes flashed with excitement as he took Celine's gentle prompting as permission. With care and enthusiasm, he carefully placed the newly forged sword flat on a stable engraving table, feeling its cool blade beneath his fingers. The blade gleamed subtly in the warm light of the forge, smooth and awaiting its final transformation. He exhaled softly, remembering the things he had learned from the Runesmithing book. Visualizing clearly, he began the intricate process of engraving 3 primary runes suitable for a Tier 1 weapon: flow, stabilize, and sharpen. Slowly, Orion steadied his breathing and picked up the runescriber blade from the side. His mana flowed outward smoothly, entering the blade and manifesting a thin, glowing line of azure energy. Carefully, he traced the elegant yet precise lines for the first rune, flow, symbolizing the controlled channeling of mana within the weapon. His movements were calm and smooth, reflecting his strong control and innate talent. Satisfied with the first rune's completion, Orion moved methodically to the second rune, stabilize, a vital component that ensured the structural integrity of the blade during mana flow. His blade traced the intricate curves and sharp corners of the rune atop the sword, mana lines shimmering softly as they adhered seamlessly to the metal. Confidence building, Orion approached the final rune, sharpen, intended to enhance the cutting edge with subtle mana reinforcement. As before, he methodically guided his mana with ease, finishing the rune cleanly. The 3 runes now glowed faintly, a harmonious arrangement upon the sword's smooth blade. Feeling exhilarated by his steady progress, Orion shifted to the next critical phase, connecting the runes with detailed mana circuits. The circuits would interlink the runes, forming an intricate web that guided mana from rune to rune, activating and balancing their effects. Orion took extra care, his brow furrowing in deep concentration as he carefully laid down thin lines of glowing mana, meticulously interweaving connections between the runes. He traced the circuit between flow and stabilize seamlessly. However, as he moved from stabilize to sharpen, he misjudged a single subtle curve in the intricate pattern. It was a slight, nearly imperceptible deviation, yet enough to drastically disrupt the delicate equilibrium. Orion realized his error a split second too late, as the mana circuit connected abruptly. Suddenly, an intense surge of unstable mana flared violently within the blade. Careful! Celine called out, her eyes instantly noticing the imbalance. In the next instant, the sword erupted in a sharp, deafening explosion. Metal shards flew outward in every direction, propelled by rampant mana. Before Orion could even react, Celine had calmly raised her hand. A translucent shield of silvery mana instantly appeared around him, effortlessly intercepting the deadly debris and diffusing the force of the explosion. The echoing silence that followed was stark, broken only by Orion's sharp breathing. His eyes widened in slight shock and disappointment, realizing he had failed in crafting the sword. "Grandma, Orion began, feeling a slight bit of embarrassment. Celine simply chuckled gently, her eyes filled with warmth and understanding. "Relax, my dear. Mistakes like this happen to everyone during their first attempts. Rune engraving requires precision, patience, and above all, experience." Orion exhaled deeply, frustration fading as he listened carefully. "Can you explain exactly what I did wrong?" Celine stepped forward, carefully examining the ruined fragments of the sword scattered across the floor. "Your initial rune inscriptions were perfect. However, when linking the runes together, you slightly misaligned the mana circuit connecting stabilize and sharpen. The imbalance of mana flow triggered the rapid destabilization you witnessed." Orion nodded slowly, absorbing every word thoughtfully. "I understand. So even a tiny mistake in the circuit can cause such a drastic reaction?" Celine's expression grew serious, yet still gentle. "Exactly, dear. Mana circuits and runes are like delicate instruments. One mistake can trigger severe backlash. Precision is essential. Orion lowered his head slightly, thoughtfully absorbing the valuable lesson. I'll be more careful next time. Celine gently patted his shoulder, smiling reassuringly. I know you will. Now, let me share an old tale about the consequences of neglecting rune precision. Her gaze grew distant, recalling a memory with deep seriousness. Long ago, there existed a flourishing goblin kingdom, widely renowned for their advanced runecraft. Ambitious to create a powerful weapon surpassing anything seen before in their kingdom, the Goblin King gathered the finest runesmiths and smiths in the kingdom. Orion's attention sharpened, captivated by Celine's storytelling. Celine continued solemnly, they intended to forge a weapon capable of channeling mana beyond their own limits. Unfortunately, due to arrogance and haste, they rushed the engraving process. A single rune circuit was misaligned, just as you experienced moments ago. She paused briefly, letting Orion appreciate the gravity of the story. The unstable mana unleashed from their mistake was catastrophic. The explosion annihilated the entire capital city, and its shockwaves collapsed the kingdom's foundations, leaving behind only ruins and legends. Orion looked at her suspiciously. How come you know this when everyone who was there died? I don't think a ruined weapon can show so much. Celine nodded her head. It's good that you're listening carefully. So listen, the truth is, I made that up. Orion paused, looking at her speechlessly. You made up that whole story? She raised an eyebrow. No, only the mistake part. This indeed happened before and it was related to the weapon, but we don't know exactly what. A lot speculate that they made a mistake during the rune engraving process. He couldn't help but be suspicious of her after that little stunt. Celine gave Orion a gentle, amused smile, seeing his skeptical look. Regardless, the key point remains true, my dear, never underestimate the precision required in rune crafting. Even the tiniest mistake can lead to devastating consequences. Orion nodded, feeling a blend of admiration and slight exasperation toward his grandmother's storytelling. I understand, Grandma. I'll keep practicing until I can inscribe runes flawlessly. She patted his shoulder reassuringly. Good. You've already learned more than most do at your age. Now go rest, you've earned it after all this hard work. Orion stretched slightly, feeling the accumulated fatigue from the intense crafting session. He gave one last look around the smithy, taking in the scattered fragments of the sword he had meticulously forged, a stark reminder of his first rune engraving attempt. With a resigned yet determined expression, Orion finally turned and left the forge, heading back to his room to rest, reflect, and plan his next steps. After who knows how long, morning sunlight streamed gently through the windows of Orion's luxurious obsidian carriage, softly illuminating the comfortable interior as it traveled smoothly along the paved road towards Thunder Peak Royal Academy. Orion sat comfortably, dressed neatly in his academy attire, eyes bright with anticipation. He rested his head against the carriage window, idly watching the scenery passing by, feeling a mix of excitement and curiosity bubbling inside him. Master, you're unusually cheerful today. Lumi playfully remarked, her cheerful hologram hovering nearby. Orion chuckled lightly, am I? Maybe it's because I'll finally see everyone again. It's been a while since I've been to the academy. Chapter 237, Edgar's wish. Lumi giggled teasingly. You're just excited to see NYSS and Arya again, aren't you, Master? Greater than over equal to less than over equal to. Orion laughed softly, shaking his head. I wonder how they would react if I told them I learned runesmithing during this time. I also managed to craft a tier 1 sword yesterday. Yes, Master. But then Grandma Celine requested you for it. You didn't even hesitate to give it away. She seemed very pleased too. Lumi replied brightly. Orion smiled warmly, recalling Celine's proud expression when he'd presented the flawless tier 1 blade to her. She probably wanted it as a keepsake to mark my progress. And if Grandma wants it, how could I possibly refuse? The carriage rolled smoothly onward, and Orion turned his thoughts to the present day. Today marks the end of Vice Dean Hargan's test. Ah, yes. The one where everyone must successfully create their affinity rune within a month. But Master finished it so quickly, just within a few days. It felt like you barely started and were already done. Lumi exclaimed excitedly, pride clear in her cheerful voice. Orion chuckled softly, well, that's because it was me. For most students, forming an affinity rune for the first time is genuinely difficult. Even Elias took such a long time, and he's one of the best in our batch. He gazed thoughtfully through the carriage window, imagining the atmosphere that would soon envelop the academy. I wonder how many will fail and be eliminated today. Do you think there will be a lot eliminated, Master? Lumi asked curiously. Orion's expression turned thoughtful as he nodded slowly. Unfortunately, yes. Last I heard, 1/3 of the students get eliminated in the first year. I don't know how many tests there will be, but quite a few commoners and low-ranking nobles will be eliminated. He continued quietly, sympathy clear in his voice, the academy isn't a gentle place. Those who can't meet standards must leave. It's harsh, but it also ensures the strength and talent of the remaining students. Vice Dean Hargan made it clear at the start. Lumi floated closer, her hologram expression turning serious for a rare moment. But Master, what happens to those eliminated students? Can't they try again later? Of course they can. And all of them will form their affinity rune later. Orion replied softly, that's how the kingdom's military works, and how low-ranking nobles survive. Huh. Everyone has their own destiny, huh? Orion softly nodded but didn't comment further. After a while of silence, Lumi spoke. Soul Path is so hard, Master. Even after trying for days you couldn't ignite your life fire. He softly chuckled inwardly, I can't get everything easily now, can I? But I can feel it's close. I should be able to ignite my life fire either today or tomorrow. The carriage slowed slightly as they neared the gates of Thunder Peak Royal Academy. Orion straightened, adjusting his uniform calmly and neatly. Regardless, Orion concluded gently, we'll see when I ignite it soon enough. The carriage finally came to a gentle stop before the academy's grand entrance. Edgar pushed open the gate as Orion stepped outside, breathing deeply as he gazed at the familiar, bustling academy grounds. Students moved hurriedly about, chatting excitedly or nervously, clearly aware of the day's significance. He turned around, I will see you later, Uncle Edgar, Brother Lucan. Edgar smiled calmly and nodded his head, have a good day, young master. While Lucan took out his pebble to play, he looked at Orion playfully, break a leg, young master. Orion shook his head with a smile and left toward the academy. Edgar and Lucan, on the other hand, moved quietly aside, eventually finding a comfortable spot beneath the cooling shade of a grand oak tree nearby. The leaves overhead rustled gently in the morning breeze, casting shadowed sunlight across their relaxed bodies. Lucan stretched lazily before dropping onto the soft grass with a satisfied sigh, glancing sidelong at Edgar with a curious light in his eyes. Master Eldrick left the mansion a few days ago, Lucan began softly, his voice relaxed but thoughtful. Headed toward the Empire, from what I overheard. Edgar, who had been gazing calmly at Orion's retreating figure, slowly nodded his head, his expression turning more serious. Indeed. It was inevitable. With the recent activities of the demons intensifying in the southern regions, Master Eldrick must personally confirm their whereabouts and ascertain the true nature of the threat. Lucan leaned back against the tree trunk, his eyes half closed as he idly played with a small pebble between his fingers. You think the situation is worsening? Edgar's expression darkened slightly, his gaze distant yet alert. Yes. The sudden spike in demon movements is troubling. Master Eldrick mentioned the possibility of greater conflict emerging soon. He cannot afford to be caught unaware, especially not now. Lucan paused, twirling the pebble carefully. He then abruptly changed the subject, looking at Edgar with a faint, mischievous smile. Speaking of surprises, young Master Orion's growth lately has been truly monstrous. He's barely begun learning runesmithing, yet he's already successfully forged his first Tier 1 weapon. At this rate, he'll soon outpace both of us. Edgar's eyes brightened noticeably, pride clearly evident in his composed demeanor. He smiled subtly, a rare warmth spreading across his typically stoic face. Indeed. Young Master Orion possesses talent beyond comparison, matched only by his extraordinary diligence. Watching him grow day by day truly fills me with pride. Lucan carefully observed Edgar's expression, his playful demeanor fading into something softer and more contemplative. He hesitated slightly before quietly asking, "Sir Edgar, tell me honestly, what do you truly think about Orion?" Edgar turned slightly, raising an eyebrow in mild amusement. He chuckled softly, shaking his head gently. What else could I possibly think about him? Our duty, as loyal retainers, is simply to guide and protect him to the best of our abilities. Lucan shook his head, his voice lowering seriously as he looked Edgar directly in the eyes. Come now, Sir Edgar. We both know it's more than mere duty. You train him more diligently and attentively than any retainer I've ever seen. You even shared Rena and Fiora's sensitive pasts with me, solely to ensure Orion receives the best possible support and training. Such actions go far beyond mere obligation. Edgar's relaxed demeanor faltered momentarily, his calm gaze wavering slightly as he released a slow, deep exhale. He glanced away, toward the distant academy buildings where Orion had disappeared, and his voice softened quietly. I never had a true successor, Lucan. Swordsmanship has always been my path, my passion, and my greatest pride. But now, as I grow older, I find myself wishing to pass down every ounce of my knowledge and experience. I hope Orion will master all my teachings, ensuring my life's efforts won't fade away with my eventual passing. Lucan regarded Edgar seriously, his tone gentle yet firm. From the way you speak, from how your eyes follow him with pride and affection, you don't see Orion merely as your successor, do you? Edgar paused abruptly, his body growing still as Lucan's words resonated deeply. His eyes drifted slowly upward, quietly studying the gently swaying branches above, sunlight flickering softly between rustling leaves. Chapter 238, Meeting with Club. After a long, heavy silence, he finally sighed, a profound and wistful expression briefly crossing his features. Perhaps you're right, Edgar admitted softly, a subtle hint of loneliness and sincerity filling his voice. Over the years, serving the Hellstorm family, I never allowed myself such sentimental attachments. Yet, Orion somehow became an exception. Every day, I see more clearly that I no longer merely wish to train a disciple or even a successor. He is far more important to me than I had ever anticipated. Lucan smiled gently, sensing the weight behind Edgar's quiet admission. He closed his eyes again, leaning comfortably back against the tree as the breeze whispered softly around them. Well then, Lucan murmured calmly, his voice returning to its usual playful tone, perhaps you should stop trying to deny it. You look at him as your son more than your successor. Edgar didn't respond immediately. Instead, he allowed himself a faint, almost bittersweet smile, exhaling another quiet sigh as his eyes continued gazing thoughtfully into the distance. Perhaps you're right, he finally whispered softly, his expression slightly complex as he shook his head and turned to look at the azure sky and fleeting clouds. Inside the academy, the atmosphere was thick with palpable tension and anxiety. Some students whispered nervously, their voices hushed but urgent, their faces revealing worry and uncertainty. Today marked the end of Vice Dean Hargan's test, a decisive moment that would shape the paths of many young cultivators. The stone-paved pathways buzzed quietly, students moving swiftly toward the main building or gathering in small groups, exchanging anxious glances and murmured speculations about who might pass or fail. Yet Orion remained unaffected by the heavy mood, his calm and confident demeanor matching the other students who had successfully made their affinity rune. With calm footsteps, he navigated through the bustling crowd toward the garden. Upon entering the lush green garden dotted with vibrant flowers and gently swaying trees, Orion spotted familiar faces gathered near a stone pavilion at the center. Arya stood elegantly, quietly conversing with Amelia, whose gentle laugh echoed softly. NYSS leaned casually against a pillar, her expression neutral yet her eyes brightening subtly upon noticing Orion's approach. Elias and Kale were deep in conversation, their voices animated but relaxed, while Thalira and Sylvia talked with each other. As Orion drew closer, Arya turned and smiled warmly, breaking off her conversation. Look who finally decided to show up. Welcome back, Brother Orion. As he approached, a relaxed warmth settled over the previously anxious group. Elias stepped forward eagerly, lightly punching Orion's shoulder in greeting. Orion, finally here. It's been a while. Kale chuckled softly, arms crossed comfortably as he leaned against the stone pillar. We were starting to wonder if you'd forgotten about us. Orion laughed lightly, his eyes sweeping across the gathered friends. How could I? You guys are quite memorable, after all. NYSS smiled faintly seeing Orion. It seems you have been quite busy for the past few days. You didn't even come to the academy. Indeed, Orion admitted with a chuckle. I was busy training at home. But I have to say, it seems like I wasn't the only one training hard. Did all of you reach Tier 3 already? His gaze fell pointedly on Elias, noticing the difference immediately. Except Elias, who's still at Tier 2. Sylvia chuckled lightly, shaking her head with gentle amusement. Orion, you give us too much credit. Most of us were already at Tier 2 when we entered the academy. All we needed was the proper push. Arya nodded, her graceful features illuminated by quiet pride. Except me. I reached Tier 3 from Tier 1 already. The Tower of Myths helped a bunch, as well as some resources from home. Thalira softly added, indeed, it was mostly about consolidating our mana control and refining our techniques. The Academy's resources made the breakthrough smooth. Elias slumped theatrically, dramatically sulking as he folded his arms. Well, not everyone has an easy road. Some of us have no support and must fend for ourselves. It's not easy being me, you know? Orion laughed lightly, patting Elias reassuringly on the shoulder. Come now, Elias. You've already advanced to Tier 2 within just a month, and with a rare element like gravity at that. That's impressive enough on its own. Elias sighed deeply, feigning exaggerated sadness before giving Orion a grudging smile. You're just trying to console me. It was easier because I only have to focus on mastering a single element, and the Academy's elemental rooms helped immensely. Orion raised an eyebrow curiously, visibly intrigued. Elemental rooms? What are those? Arya looked at him in mild astonishment, clearly surprised by his lack of knowledge. Brother Orion, you've been here for a month and you really haven't heard of them? He shrugged casually, unbothered by her incredulity. You know how little time I spend at the Academy, I didn't have time to explore thoroughly. I've been quite occupied, remember? Arya sighed softly, shaking her head with mild exasperation. The elemental rooms are specialized chambers filled with concentrated elemental mana. Students can absorb this energy directly to enhance their elemental cultivation. Think of them as miniature origin mana pools, though obviously less potent. They're perfect for focused practice and making rapid progress. Orion's eyes brightened with genuine interest. That's quite remarkable. Seems I've missed out on more than a few valuable resources. NYSS looked at him with a faint smile, but would those rooms be even useful for someone with as many affinities as you? The others laughed lightly, the atmosphere relaxing further as their camaraderie deepened. Elias stretched dramatically, finally dropping his mock sulkiness. All right. Let's get going to Vice Dean Hargan's test completion venue. We don't want to be late, today's the big day, after all. Sylvia nodded with seriousness, her calm demeanor returning as she glanced toward the main building. Indeed. Many students' fates will be decided today. It's best we head over now. Orion took a deep breath, nodding thoughtfully. Yes, you're right. Let's not keep everyone waiting. The group exchanged final smiles and nods, then began walking together toward the grand hall where Vice Dean Hargan awaited to announce the results. Orion and his group swiftly reached the entrance to the grand examination hall, the massive doors looming majestically overhead. The carved wooden doors swung open silently, revealing the vast interior beyond. Sunlight spilled through tall windows lining the upper walls, casting long beams that illuminated floating motes of dust and mana, giving the room a subtly magical ambience. Rows of seats arranged in precise formations filled the hall, tiered slightly to ensure that every student had a clear view of the elevated stage ahead. At the very front were 10 luxurious seats, intricately carved and cushioned, reserved explicitly for the top students. Familiar banners representing the Academy's emblem fluttered gently along the walls, creating a dignified atmosphere that underscored the significance of this day. Orion calmly walked forward, leading his group toward their designated seats. NYSS moved swiftly, her quiet steps barely audible as she took the farthest seat at the corner, immediately crossing her arms and leaning back into a posture as if she didn't care about anyone else. Chapter 239, New Test. Orion followed suit, settling comfortably into the chair beside her, casting a brief glance her way. She met his eyes for a fleeting moment, her expression enigmatic yet softly amused, seeing that no one other than him dared to sit close to her. Arya gracefully took the seat on Orion's other side, sitting elegantly, her posture perfect. Beside her, Emilia settled quietly, followed by Sylvia, Elias, Kale, Philira, and the others, each occupying their assigned seats calmly and with dignity. The hall gradually filled as more students filtered inside, their faces tense, anxiety tangible in the air. Whispers fluttered among the students, some speculating about the results, others nervously joking to lighten the tense mood. Orion, relaxed in his chair, observed them with faint interest. He glanced at Arya, attempting to make a joke, with how tense everyone is, you'd think we were here for executions instead of test results. Arya smiled faintly, her expression remaining calm. It's understandable. For many, this is the moment that determines their future in the Academy. Before Orion could reply, the whispers abruptly hushed. Vice Dean Hargan and Vice Dean Elanora entered from opposite ends of the grand stage. Hargan, stoic and commanding in his azure robes embroidered with thundercloud motifs, walked to the center, his mere presence instantly silencing any lingering chatter. Beside him, Elanora moved with graceful poise, her emerald robes shimmering subtly under the hall's enchanted lighting, a playful yet composed smile on her lips. Hargan's voice cut sharply through the stillness, resonating powerfully throughout the hall. Welcome once again, students. Today, we gather to conclude your first significant trial, the formation of your affinity rune. However, before we announce the results, it is customary to recognize the students who demonstrated exceptional achievements within the Tower of Myths during the past month. He swept his keen gaze over the assembled students, pausing meaningfully on Orion and the others at the front. The top 10 students, unsurprisingly, showcased outstanding talent and perseverance. Orion Hellstorm, Arya Stormrend, NYSS Blackwell, Emilia Ashbourne, Sylvia Stormbolt, Garen Harrington, Philira Norwin, and Kale Duskfield have all surpassed expectations, each reaching beyond the 40th floor, an accomplishment rarely seen in first years. A wave of murmurs rippled through the crowd, gazes filled with envy, admiration, and curiosity fixed upon Orion and his companions. Some students leaned forward eagerly, wishing fervently they could someday match their accomplishments. Hargan continued, his voice steady. Additionally, several other students also displayed commendable performances, Marcus Vale, Henry Dawnwing, and Tessa Silverbranch. Your diligence has not gone unnoticed. You have honored your family names. Orion casually glanced toward Marcus and Henry seated a few rows behind, their previously nervous faces now beaming with pride and relief. He smiled faintly, pleased to see their progress. Then Hargan paused, the atmosphere growing heavier as his expression darkened. His voice lowered, becoming heavy. Unfortunately, not everyone was successful. Of the 300 new students enrolled, 15 failed to form their affinity runes within the allotted time. The atmosphere plummeted instantly, the room becoming unbearably tense. Orion's lips twitched slightly in surprise. Only 15 students had failed? Given the oppressive anxiety he'd felt earlier, he'd imagined a much greater number. It seems even a small number of failures can create an atmosphere as heavy as if someone had died, Orion mused inwardly. Vice Dean Hargan exhaled quietly, then announced, though regrettable, 15 failures out of 300 marks a new record. This year's cohort has demonstrated exceptional talent and determination, the lowest failure rate ever recorded in the history of Thunder Peak Royal Academy. Immediately, joyous cheers and relieved laughter filled the hall, a stark contrast to the somber air from moments ago. The students who passed exchanged jubilant embraces and animated congratulations. Meanwhile, those who had failed were quietly escorted out by academy staff, their heads bowed in defeat and shame. Orion watched them depart with mild sympathy, acknowledging silently the harsh reality of the academy's expectations. Hargan then stepped aside, allowing Elanora to move forward elegantly. She cast a warm, charming smile upon the now relaxed students. Congratulations, everyone, for your success in this first trial. Your diligence and effort deserve praise. Her smile grew subtly playful, eyes twinkling as she added lightly, as for your next test, I assure you, I won't be quite as harsh as Vice Dean Hargan. You will have ample time to prepare yourselves. A collective sigh of relief echoed through the hall. Even Orion's friends visibly relaxed, their shoulders easing from tension they hadn't realized they'd been holding. Yet Orion narrowed his eyes slightly, an uneasy premonition stirring deep in his gut. Despite her soothing words and gentle demeanor, Elanora radiated a subtle aura of hidden danger, one he instinctively felt rivaled Hargan's ruthless methods. She's not one bit less ruthless than Vice Dean Hargan, Orion silently thought, growing wary. Unaware of Orion's suspicions, Elanora continued smoothly, you will have exactly 10 months to prepare yourselves fully. A stunned silence fell upon the hall, the students' eyes widening collectively in astonishment and confusion. 10 months? Orion thought, surprise rippling through him. That's excessively generous. Which can only mean. Before any student could voice their shock or relief, Elanora's charming smile deepened. Her voice, previously soothing, now carried a subtle yet unmistakable edge. And for your test, at the conclusion of these 10 months, each and every one of you will be sent directly to the war zone at the southern border. A collective gasp of shock and disbelief erupted throughout the hall. Faces drained of color, eyes widened in fear, and murmurs filled with anxiety surged instantly. Even Arya, usually calm and poised, stared forward, stunned, while NYSS uncrossed her arms, leaning forward with rare seriousness, her previously indifferent demeanor utterly shattered. Orion felt his lips twitching. A war zone? Even he had underestimated Elanora's ruthlessness. Sending first-year students directly into a genuine battlefield was an unprecedentedly brutal decision. Master, is she trying to kill you all? Degree. He met Arya's gaze briefly, seeing similar apprehension reflected in her eyes. Behind him, Elias mumbled in disbelief, she calls this less harsh? She might be even more terrifying than Hargan. Orion took a slow breath, forcing himself to calm despite the sudden tension gripping his heart. Beside him, NYSS quietly whispered, her voice uncharacteristically serious, it seems things are finally getting interesting, aren't they? He glanced at her, noting the faint, enigmatic smile returning to her lips, yet he could see the serious glint lingering deep within her dark eyes. Orion gave a subtle nod. Interesting indeed. Elanora calmly observed the reactions, her gentle yet deadly smile never faltering. She raised a slender hand, effortlessly silencing the panicked murmurs, her voice cool yet commanding. 10 months, she repeated clearly, firmly embedding the time limit into their minds. Use it wisely, dear students. This academy does not shelter its seedlings, we sharpen them into their peak state. Prove to us that you are capable of surviving. Prove you are worthy of standing at the peak. She paused meaningfully, her gaze sweeping sharply over each student, finally lingering briefly on Orion's determined face. Welcome to your final test of the year. May fortune favor you on the battlefield. Well, we are fucked, Orion thought to himself while looking at the slightly smiling face of Elanora. Chapter 240, Hargan and Elanora's talk. Vice Dean Hargan stepped forward once more, his deep azure robes flowing as if reflecting his solemn mood. The students' murmurs gradually quieted, their eyes nervously shifting toward him. His piercing gaze swept across the hall, stopping momentarily on the faces of Orion, Arya, and other top students. I urge all of you to heed Vice Dean Elanora's words carefully. students have indeed lost their lives during Academy's examinations before. This is not a mere threat to frighten you, it's a sad reality. Treat your preparation with utmost seriousness. Orion inwardly groaned, no shit, we are going to a war zone. Despite his wry humor, he clearly understood the severity of the situation. Around him, the silence shattered into tense whispers. Students exchanged panicked glances, unease palpable in the stifling air of the grand hall. We barely started at the academy and now we're being sent to war? This is madness, one student anxiously muttered, his voice trembling with disbelief. Another responded nervously, do you think they'll really let us die out there? Maybe this is just to scare us. Arya, composed despite the shocking news, turned subtly toward Orion, whispering softly, this will be more dangerous than any of our previous training. We'll need to prepare ourselves carefully. Orion nodded slowly, his expression thoughtful. We'll have to do whatever it takes. After all, we're at the academy precisely to face challenges like these. NYSS, sitting calmly beside Orion, crossed her arms once more, her expression returning to its usual indifferent mask, though the glint of seriousness in her eyes hadn't faded. She softly murmured, barely audible, it'll certainly weed out those who don't deserve to stand at the top. As the murmurs continued, Vice Dean Hargan turned sharply, his stern presence dominating the room. He exchanged a quiet glance with Vice Dean Elanora, who nodded gently. With synchronized steps, the two stepped off the platform, exiting the hall through the doors from which they'd entered. Their departure left the students feeling an unsettling mixture of dread, apprehension, and cautious determination. Outside the examination hall, Elanora released a gentle, weary sigh, her typically graceful and composed stance relaxing now that they were away from the prying eyes of the students. The playful charm and unshakable confidence of her earlier demeanor slipped, revealing an uncharacteristic moment of uncertainty. Turning slowly toward Hargan, her eyes filled with concern, she asked softly, Hargan, do you think we've been too harsh on them? They're only first-year students, after all. Sending them straight to a war zone feels dangerously unprecedented. Hargan paused thoughtfully, his deep azure robes gently shifting around him as he considered her words. After a moment, he shook his head firmly, his gaze resolute yet reassuring. This is the golden age. We need to be more ruthless with our means. Before, we used to have one test every 3 months. But clearly, this batch of students is far more talented. Instead of making them push every other month, it would be better to give them the creative freedom to do as they wish until the time of the test arrives. He looked at her, shaking his head softly. And besides, Elanora, we aren't truly sending them to the front lines or into major conflicts. Their deployment will be restricted to minor cities, places with minimal risk. Our aim is simply to let them gain first-hand experience, not to lead them into certain doom. Elanora exhaled again, feeling that Hargan's words made sense. That's good to hear, Hargan. But still, the southern border is not something to trifle with at this moment. The situation there can worsen at any moment. Hargan nodded gravely, his expression hardening. Yes, the demons are becoming alarmingly bold and coordinated. It's clear something sinister is brewing beneath the surface. Even I can't help but feel unease. Eleanor's gaze turned sharp, her usually playful eyes narrowing as she stared ahead. I fear these small skirmishes will soon erupt into something much greater. If the demons escalate their aggression further, the southern towns and cities may suffer greatly. Hargan shook his head. That's why we gave the students a buffer of 10 months. Some of them should be able to reach the 5th level in this time. Now we only need to trust our students. Elanora slowly nodded, sighing lightly as her expression slightly brightened again. You're right, Hargan. Maybe I was being too worried. He exhaled and turned around. Elanora raised her head and looked at him curiously. Where are you going? Hargan paused. To the battlefield. The test has been concluded here. About time I return there to slaughter those mongrels. Boom. Thunder crackled in front of Elanora as Hargan vanished from his place. She softly shook her head. He really hates demons to the bone, huh? With one last glance back at the hall where students had gathered, she took off toward the sky pavilion. Back in the garden beneath the sprawling cherry blossom tree, Orion and his fellow club members had gathered once more. The gentle breeze carried delicate petals through the air, drifting lazily around the small group, a stark contrast to the heavy topic they discussed. The tranquility of the garden felt almost surreal compared to the tense atmosphere inside the Academy's examination hall just moments before. Elias paced anxiously, frustration evident in his every movement. He waved his hands angrily, his voice dripping with annoyance and disbelief. This is definitely Hargan's twisted idea. No way the gentle Vice Dean Elanora could think of sending us to a war zone. She's always been kind and considerate, unlike that ruthless old man. Kale chuckled softly, shaking his head at Elias's exaggerated reaction. Calm down, Elias. Whether it's Vice Dean Hargan or Elanora, does it really matter who made the call? The fact remains, we're headed into a genuine battle. Elias shot him an irritated glance, his voice rising with each word. Of course it matters. Vice Dean Elanora at least would have given us a gentler test. This is outrageous. It's Hargan who's always pushing us to the brink. Sylvia interjected calmly, her cool voice cutting through Elias's tirade with ease. You do realize Vice Dean Elanora delivered the announcement herself, right? She didn't exactly look hesitant or apologetic. Elias paused mid-sentence, visibly deflating under Sylvia's sharp gaze. He grumbled quietly, reluctant to accept her point. Maybe she was pressured by Hargan? She's probably as miserable as we are. Arya, sitting gracefully on the grass, chuckled softly at Elias's futile attempt to rationalize. Regardless of who made the decision, we should focus more on preparing ourselves. The test is inevitable, and complaining won't change a thing. Philyra, leaning casually against the tree trunk, spoke softly with an amused glint in her eyes. If anything, Vice Dean Elanora's involvement makes this test more frightening. After all, gentle people rarely remain gentle forever. Elias groaned dramatically, collapsing onto the grass beside Kale. I give up. You guys clearly don't share my pain. I just hope we survive this insane idea. Orion, who had remained silent up until now, finally spoke with a confident tone. It's true that this is an extreme test, but remember, this academy was never meant to coddle us. Whether it's Hargan or Elanora, they wouldn't give us this task if they didn't believe we were capable.